It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Wow, do we have a great show. Shelley Brisbane, a newbie, joins us, but she's going to be great. Lisa Schmeizer's here. Larry Maggot, a longtime friend. I've got the new Apple Watch Ultra. We'll talk a little bit about that. The Serial Podcast claims its victory. And NyQuil Chicken, why the FDA probably should not have said anything about it. It's all coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 894, recorded Sunday, September 25th, 2022. Juking the Stats. This episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Shopify. Millions of the world's most successful brands trust Shopify to sell, ship, and process payments anywhere. Go to shopify.com/twit, all lowercase, to start your free trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. And by Expressvpn. It's 2022. You need to use a VPN every time you go online. If you don't have one yet, visit expressvpn.com/twit. Take back your online privacy today. Use our link to get 3 extra months free with a 1-year package. And by ZipRecruiter. There are so many podcasts out right now, and it takes a team of people to bring them together. Whether you're hiring for a podcast or for your growing business, one place makes it easy. ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/twit. And by Audible. Audible lets you enjoy all of your audio entertainment in one app. Let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, be inspired, or be entertained. New members can try it free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/twit or text TWIT to 500-500. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the latest tech news with a panel of tech-aware reporters, people with their fingers on the pulse of tech, people like Larry Maggot, President and CEO of ConnectSafely.org. Hello, Larry.
Hello, Leo. How are you?
What the hell happened to your mustache?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a very long story, but I'll make it very. So I was diagnosed with sleep apnea.
Yeah.
And one of the things they told me I should do, or not the doctors, but the internet told me I should do, is to put tape over my mouth.
Yeah, I do the taping.
You do. Yeah. Well, the tape didn't stick to the mustache.
No, it won't.
But it turns out the tape doesn't help me anyway. So you still do that?
I did it because I read a book called Breath.
Yes. Right. That's the book I read.
Yeah. And he's, it's an odd book.
Yeah. Right.
But his premise is, in a nutshell, breathe through your nose, not your mouth.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Because your nose is filtering and air conditioning and stuff. And if you breathe through your mouth, he says the mouth is a backup for an emergencies you shouldn't be using. So you kind of got to get in the habit of breathing through your nose. But the problem is at night you're asleep, you're unconscious. So I use a little 3M surgical tape. Try
it with a mustache. It's more challenging.
Yeah. Well, somebody, and I'll find this for you. Somebody in our Discord, our Club Twit chat, sent me one for people with beards.
Oh,
it's a lot more expensive, but if you want to grow the mustache back, I bet your wife's happy.
I stopped the tape and kept the mustache.
Did you say, "Who are you, stranger"?
Well, people say I look younger. I don't think it's necessarily true, but if anybody wants to give me any compliments, I'll take them. So,
You actually look like George Gobel, but I won't.
Oh, no.
I won't rub that in.
Oh, good. Wasn't he on Hollywood Squares?
Yeah.
We should rearrange the monitors.
Tell me if he does not look. I'm going to show you a picture of George Gobel. Tell me if he does not look like George Gobel. Yeah.
Oh no.
No, it's okay. You don't have to overlay the two.
Flat top haircut.
Ruin my day.
Oh, he's cute. Anyway, great to have you. Thank you so much for being here. Also with us, I haven't seen you in ages, Lisa Schmeiser. She's got a new job, editor-in-chief of No Jitter. Hi, Lisa.
Hi there.
In the studio.
It's so great to be back in the studio.
Nice.
I'm so happy to see everybody in person here, too. I've missed the crew.
The only reason I allowed you to come in studio is I thought you would bring Girl Scout cookies.
That will be Q1 2023.
Apparently it's the wrong time of year.
Yeah. Well, we're selling nuts starting on October 1st, but not quite the same.
You could have bring in Girl Scout nuts.
Yeah. Well, they do the sales differently then, but
Didn't come out right. Sorry.
It's really upsetting.
It's terrible.
Really,
hey, it could be worse. It could have been Boy Scout nuts. And then you'd really... We'd have to stop the show and start over.
No,
we were talking earlier about the FCC practices. Do we need to worry about that on this show?
Also, anyway, great to have you also with us. Somebody who's never appeared on Twitter before, but has been a part of our shows for a long time. Shelley Brisbane is here. You know her, I know, from sixcolors.com and Relay FM. She is a producer and reporter for Texas. Is it the Texas Standard? I think it is.
We answer to either, but it is the Texas Standard, the national news show of Texas, we like to say.
That's very Texan, isn't it?
It's very Texan. I didn't invent it, but it is absolutely on brand, and I put it in my signature for that reason.
The national news show for Texas.
People read my emails when I say that in the bottom.
That is hysterical. Is it a newspaper or is it just a website now?
No, it's a radio show. It's a public radio show hosted at KUT Public Radio in Austin. We are on 30 stations across the state of Texas. We do have a website, which I ran for about 5 years. I no longer do that. And we're a podcast. So if you're interested in the news of Texas, texasstandard.org is where it's at.
I think there's been a lot of news from Texas of late.
A little bit, yes. We're kind of busy down there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're bussing your news up to the north now. That's great. Kidding. TexasStandard.org.
Oh my God, I'm going to stay out of that. I'm not saying it.
Kidding. And just to let you know, because I think it's important that you know that Shelley does a lot of accessibility stuff because she has low vision, which is a great thing for us to have because a lot of times we try to talk about accessibility without any experience of what it's like to try to use technology with a disability. So I'm really glad to have you on for that reason as well. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and you have actually, how many books on this issue? Subject?
Well, this is the 10th anniversary of a book I write called iOS Access for All, and I do that book each year with the new iOS, and so I'm frantically working on the iOS 16 edition. I've written a whole bunch of other books just on tech generally and specifically Mac stuff, but for the past 10 years, my project has been this giant comprehensive guide to accessibility for iOS folks.
That must be a nightmare every time a new iOS comes out. That's a lot.
I mean, nightmare is the way I want to say it on Twitter, and then wait, no, I want people to buy the book.
Right.
And, be excited about it.
It's a joyous effort, a labor.
It's a delightful thing. Every time Apple adds new features, I'm like, yeah, bring them on.
My sense is, though, Apple has paid a lot of attention to accessibility, and iOS is probably the premier platform, mobile platform for accessibility. Yes.
Yeah, it is. I think other platforms are coming along, and I also think that there is a tendency when I say things like that Apple is the leader for everybody to think, well, it's okay, they're done, it's completed, but that's really not the case. There are obviously things that need to be improved, and then there are things that come along every year that delight and surprise us, which is what Apple wants to do. So it's an adventure because I do try to say to people, it's not done. Accessibility is a half-baked cake, and Apple just does a particularly good job of it, especially on the iOS platform. Less so on the Mac, but on the iOS platform.
Sometimes they take a step back. I remember I got a lot of calls a few versions ago when they took some features away from Siri, like Siri read me my email, that was a big, I think, mistake from an accessibility point of view.
Yeah, that happens occasionally. More often the issue with accessibility is some sort of bug because there's so much going on in the iOS operating system that sometimes new features will cause a bug to exist in VoiceOver or to exist when you're reading Braille on a Braille display. And so those don't tend to be showstopper bugs. And so sometimes those bugs stay in a little longer than you would like. Yeah. And so there's a pretty active group of people out there, both beta testers and just consumers of this stuff, that will let Apple know what they think. And usually it gets resolved, but sometimes it takes a little while for that to happen.
Last night I had a new bed partner, a rather large wristwatch. I got the Apple Ultra wristwatch. Does this watch make my butt look big? Does it actually makes it look small, doesn't it? It's a pretty hefty thing, but it's
You could watch a TV show on that watch.
Well, and wait, that's why I kind of like it.
Like maybe not the Lord of the Rings TV show,
No.
but I feel like one of those HBO prestige dramas without dragons, you could totally watch it on that watch.
As long as there were no dragons.
I mean, I'd consider it. I just like the idea that you can get large type on it. That makes me happy. There's some people who want to think of it as an accessibility watch. I'm like, yeah, but I have tiny little woman wrists, and I don't think that's for me. But
it might not be great to wear, but it is a lot better to use this face.
They should give you
all
Wonder
kinds of
Woman
things.
bracelets, actually.
100%. I like it.
Well, this is actually the thing is you take a look, the watch is a form factor that goes back a couple hundred years, right? So why aren't we updating our technology form factors for wearables to reflect what our stuff actually is meant to do, as opposed to trying to mash these previously unheard of tasks and processes into things that were invented to reflect a much
But
earlier
Lisa, the
metaphor?
computer, the
I'll tell you
technology's been
why.
doing that forever. Well, go ahead, Lisa.
Here's an example of a ladies' fashion band on an Apple
that's
Watch.
terrible.
It doesn't look good.
No.
It doesn't look, it's too thin.
No, give us the Wonder Woman wrist cuffs, man. That'd be awesome. Like
there you
imagine
go.
Wonder Woman wrist
Yes,
cuffs
Wrist
instead of
cuffs.
into it.
like turn the watch into like a wrist cuff.
Here's
Make
some,
it sci-fi.
here's some bling.
You know, but to Lisa's point, Leo, if you think about the original Macintosh desktop, what they were doing is they were taking a computer
I got one
and
for you.
using a very old, physical metaphor, moving it over to the computer, and actually not necessarily because it worked better, but because people were familiar with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's called
uncommon
skeuomorphism, right? And
Was
that's
it-
the thing we've kind of now started to eschew.
Isn't it Xerox PARC that really began to conceive of the desktop metaphor and start mainstreaming it back in the 70s?
They had to do that because
Yeah.
this was all, I'm used to files and folders.
Yeah.
But now I think this is there you go. This is a very...
Well, ask anybody under the age
This
of
is
20.
the furry leopard elastic cheetah printed beaded bracelet strap for the iWatch SE and Series Ultra.
So how is this much
Thank you, no.
I don't know. Like make those beads do stuff like the technology in Wakanda.
Oh, so you want both? you
I want it to exist. I don't want to own it personally, but I want it to exist.
you want to be
Yeah.
a woman warrior with a watch.
I'm just saying, I think a watch is like a horse buggy where it was a technology that worked really well
Right.
for the demand it needed to meet.
Right.
And what we expect to do with the technology we wear has changed substantially.
That's
since.
why this is and this isn't a watch any more than the iPhone is a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a technology device, and
Yeah.
in fact, I can call people. I can send texts. This is
Yeah.
actually a Dick Tracy watch. I can.
It's
I can
fantastic,
be on a
right?
hike and listening to music without my phone, listening to music.
Yeah.
Make a call.
Yeah.
Fall and put. You want to hear the alarm?
Oh, yeah.
Play it.
Cover your ears, everybody. This
and
is
if you're in your car, you're not getting pulled over by the cops, just to let you know.
if the cops' cars sounded like this, I'd be scared. This is I think Apple said 88 dB, so it's not so much intended to be super loud as detectable. If you've fallen and searchers know you're roughly in this area, you would set this off. You were saying there was a guy who had a heat stroke who passed away because he was feet from the path.
Yeah, it was a really sad case in Pleasanton last year where he was a distance runner. He went out.
Stop.
It was too hot.
Thank you.
It was too hot.
Not you.
He got heat stroke. He passed out. And because it's really hard to find people when they fall into underbrush.
Right. That's what this is for.
Yeah, it's basically to alert folks.
And see, to me, the sound of that alarm, I can't tell because I'm not in the studio. I don't know how loud it is to you guys.
It's not that
but
loud.
it's not like an alarm. It's not an ambulance alarm. It's not like the European. It's not an alarm as one traditionally thinks of it. I'm not saying it's a pleasant sound, but it's an unusual enough sound and it's diffuse enough that it feels. I understand what they're saying when they talk about how far the sound projects, how far it carries, and
But it doesn't hurt your ears.
People will do tests on it, but I felt positively toward it when I heard it in the video, and
You could tell. You could tell what it is. Somebody says I just scrambled a search and rescue team. I don't think so. I hope not. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Unless you have a great amount of power and you've configured it to do that.
Yeah.
Well, there are certain things that's hard to test. So the crash detection, that would be hard to test, right?
Yeah.
The new satellite feature.
Painful to test anyway.
Yeah.
So there's actually
Right.
this ties into my day job, believe it or not, because one of the big issues that's been emerging and percolating through communication is accurate 911 positioning and location. And we don't have a whole lot of time to get into laws that have just passed, but suffice it to say there are now laws in place that require any address to be able to convey accurate geographic information to 911 dispatchers. And I was interviewing folks who run the emergency response services for a particular county in Tennessee. And this is a huge part of their job, is trying to find people who are in peril and get accurate addresses so they can send out the right type of search and rescue operation. Is it fire? Is it an ambulance? Is it police? Whatever. And what I'm super curious about with this watch is, in addition to the alarm, I want to find out how search and rescue operations feel. Like if they're saying, yes, this is something that has a provable effect on our ability to find people, especially in the outdoors, because everything's united, or everything is. The rise of people who need to be rescued in the outdoors has actually shot up exponentially. In part thanks to,
because of COVID.
Well, GPS devices, watches, everyone's like, oh, I have 2 bars. I can go anywhere.
This watch makes me want to climb a mountain, scuba dive.
And you're like, I have GPS on it. I'm fine. You're not fine.
You're not fine.
You don't know how to climb a 14er.
No, you're right. I should not be out there.
So I would love to find out from search and rescue folk if something like this feature, which Apple is selling as a way to push peace of mind, will genuinely be effective for search and rescue operations, or if it's something where you have a sense of safety, but it's a false sense of safety because it doesn't get you the desired outcome.
Yeah.
We don't have the data yet, but I think that's going to be something worth keeping in mind and asking folks who do this for a living, have you seen a measurable impact on this? The same way they've seen measurable impacts on, we have had to take this person off a mountain because they got cold and called 911.
Right. Well, and this has features that would tempt me.
Yeah.
For instance, it's got a breadcrumb feature. I can push a button and as I'm walking around, it will leave a GPS marker, and then I could, in theory, and I know I would get lost immediately, follow the watch back home.
Yeah.
Then that might make me think, oh, I could go off trail because I'm going to be able to figure out where I am. That's maybe not such a good idea.
And that's actually theoretically an accessibility feature because there's turn-by-turn GPS that we all use, but if you are in a parking lot, never mind being off trail, and you're trying to get from one place that you're familiar with to a place that you're not, and you somehow get lost along the way, you can theoretically retrace your steps. I don't know how it behaves in practice, but I can see that application.
I guess I'll have to lose my car and try it. They actually do have
airport parking lots would be amazing for that.
There is a button that you can do a waypoint for your car, your parked car.
That's great.
Yeah.
So they clearly know that that's maybe one of the uses for it. I wonder how much they're influenced by accessibility, that they're building something, for the extreme athlete, but really maybe this is for everybody.
There's a lot about accessibility
honestly,
that benefits people who aren't necessarily have that disability.
That's right.
Like curbs that ramps on curbs benefit people with strollers, people on bicycles, roller skates. You don't have to be in a wheelchair to benefit from that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's.
And I
true
think
of
those features too tend to trickle down in some way. So if you don't feel like buying a minimum $800 watch that is enormous, maybe in the next couple of years, some of those features, like the breadcrumb feature particularly, or some of the other ones that are not really, like, you're probably not going to get a dive computer on your Apple Watch SE, but at some point your SE or your 9 or your 10 might have a breadcrumb feature if it proves to be popular, and certainly from an accessibility point of view, that would be great to have on other products.
Someone will steal the idea. Maybe it'll be on your Fitbit.
It is kind of funny.
Chinese knockoff.
When I'm setting it up, it asks you some questions about how you want the watch set up. And one of the questions is, would you like to know how deep you are and how cold the water is when you're diving? And of course, I'm never going to use that, but I said yes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Of course I would.
Just in case you dive.
If I did fall off a ship, and I'd like to know,
as I'm going under
as
for
I'm
the
going
last
down,
time.
I'm getting deeper.
Right.
Yeah. No, I do.
Well, we found Leo when he
Why
was in
wouldn't
50
you
feet
turn
of water.
that on? I think that's
So I have a girlfriend who's doing a project where she's hitting 50 different swimming holes around the state of California before she turns 50. And she's been blogging her progress. And one of the pieces of equipment she takes with her while she does this is a water thermometer, because she has limits on how cold the water is going to be. And I wonder how this watch might fit into that kind of project.
I can have, there's a complication on this particular face that says water temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
So I could actually be monitoring that even when I'm
So I want to shout out a comment that CR1 just made. In the U.S., the Apple Watch should include your health insurance status. If you don't have insurance, the Apple Watch should ignore you.
Oh, that's a very good point.
Well, what I'm wondering is why aren't insurance companies working harder to put together integrations that work on the Apple Watch?
Certainly.
Like Kaiser Permanente, why aren't you iWatch? Or Signal?
Yeah, certainly there are a lot of hospitals doing research studies with the watch, right?
With watches, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, there are employers that are giving people incentives for having the watch, which has some implications for their medical insurance and either incentives or they're outright giving employees Apple Watches in exchange for some sort of healthy behaviors. And actually, I know a couple people who have had those experiences, and I kind of wonder how positive it is because there's all that data. So you as the employee get the benefit of having the watch, but are you also sharing more data than you intend, either with your company or with your insurer?
that was a plot point in Billions, in Showtime's show Billions.
was it?
At one point, the new owner comes
I
in
remember that.
and gives an Apple Watch to all the employees. Like, you're so great. Stick around. Here's your Apple Watch. Then it turns out he's got a dashboard, and they're watching all the employees. And at one point, the two of them are watching one employee having a heart attack. And now they're going, God, what do we do? Should we?
Why wouldn't you call?
Because we didn't tell them we were going to be monitoring them. So they did end up calling emergency services. The EMT shows up at Wags'. He's on a Peloton. Nice plug for Peloton. He's on a Peloton pedaling, and the EMT show up. He says, "What are you doing here?" "I'm fine." And he has a heart attack.
Wow.
It's kind of a stupid plot point, but it is that plot point, which is, employers can monitor you.
Well, the question is how much of a reasonable right to privacy do you have if you're consenting to put an employer-provided
I'm
data
guessing
generator?
Apple prevents that kind of. Apple, I can't imagine there's an MDM that lets you monitor your employees' heart rate.
Well, it's not just that. How many steps? Or if, for example, you block out on Outlook, I'm in focus mode for 4 hours because Outlook now lets you do that with Microsoft Viva, and you're at focus mode. But your focus mode is you like running 15K because you're training for a marathon. Can they now check and go, oh, somebody said they were in focus mode at work, but they've just done 25,000 steps,
By the way, Wags in this show says, who called the EMT? And finally figures out, oh my God, it's this watch, and he immediately throws it out. So,
even though it might have saved his life,
it saved his life.
Yeah,
but your privacy is more important than your life, of course.
Well, is it? That's certainly how we act.
I think there are people who would
says
argue
the grave's a fine and private place.
Oh, I like it. That's a great line, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a great segue. I was going to talk about this later, but it's a good segue. So I just did a piece about how I lost 15 pounds because of my Fitbit.
Wow, congrats. You know what? That's why you look like George Goebel.
Yeah, maybe so. But,
you lost weight.
Well, the thing is, unlike the Apple Watch, I can wear it 24 hours a day because it actually has a battery that lasts more than 2 hours. But the main thing is it tracks calories automatically. So for example, today's a horrible day. I've so far burned only 964 calories, which isn't much.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything. But it also, it doesn't automatically record what you eat. We're not there yet.
That's what I'm waiting for, because it's really a pain. I do log my food, but it's such a pain. I just want the watch to know what I'm eating.
Yeah.
But does it also? Are you able to? What I love about it is like I'll look at my app and I'll say, oh, gee, I can afford to eat a big dinner tonight because I've burned more than I've taken in by X number of calories. And for me, it's working. But we'll have to see. I've also lost weight and gained it back many times. So. Tune in next time, next year to see what happens. What's happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, this Apple's health app keeps track of steps and calories.
Yeah.
And then
maybe Apple could do some kind of dental appliance that keeps track of what you eat.
I think the watch with machine learning could judge by just the weight of the spoon.
Well, if you could actually do it with your camera, that would be great. Because
there is an app
take picture of what you're eating.
It's imperfect.
Yeah,
it's called Hot Dog or Not.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding.
I
clearly watch too much TV.
One of the biggest complaints I've had about food log, we are getting far afield here, is anytime I've done food logging where it hasn't just been me writing in a notebook to look for my trends. If I'm trying to enter, I had this much salad, where it's a salad that we've made at home, like a couscous salad, then I have to find an app that's okay with me downloading the recipe. It has to recognize all the ingredients in the recipe and go from there. And just the burden of data entry is enormous.
It is.
I just overestimate.
For that reason.
I do too. I'm very, I'll pick something that's roughly there. But
and then I'll add a little bit just for the other air on that.
Honestly,
at this point, I'm like, okay, 7 servings of fruit and vegetables every day, 3 servings of, I really love.
That's a lot.
Well,
of fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, but it's good for you.
Yeah.
The
if I could just eat
energy.
figs,
yeah.
that would be fine.
For Leo, I wish you would let me know. We have a fig tree, and it's ripe right now.
Next
I would have brought
time,
them all for you.
forget the Girl Scout cookies.
I know, right? We get figs
Bring
twice
me
a year.
Fig Newtons.
Oh, figs. We have fresh figs. We have fresh figs.
Make delicious cocktails with figs, too.
Oh,
we're talking about healthy stuff. I forgot.
Delicious cocktails with figs.
Yeah.
Put a
Sorry,
pin-
that's a
put
spare
pin
time
in that,
activity of mine is
Shelley.
making delicious
Are
cocktails.
you a
with or without figs.
mixologist? Oh.
I am.
She's a gourmand.
Do you use fig syrup or actual figs?
I made fig syrup is what I did for a cocktail at one point because I had a neighbor who had a fig tree and gave me just dumped a bunch of figs on my doorstep, and I was like, well, I could eat these, or I could just make them into a nice syrup. And so that's what I did.
Would you mind sending me the recipe later? Just because our fig tree's crazy at this point. I've been giving away pints to everybody, and I'm still like running. We have a possum lives in our yard. They're at the point now where they're like Templeton the rat at the end of Charlotte's Web.
Well, the worst thing is when the figs start to ferment, then you have drunk rats in your
We have drunk
Exactly.
raccoons. That's worse.
Yeah.
Like they get they're mean drunks.
What is it I've read about figs? I don't want to go.
Wasps. It's the wasps.
It's the
inside
wasps.
figs. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something I should worry about?
No.
Okay. Just don't think about it.
Exactly.
When you're eating it.
Yeah, the same reason you don't think about thrips inside your strawberries. So.
Oh, God.
Now what?
Nope.
Thrips inside my strawberries?
Nope.
Let me talk about something
have
much
gone
less
down a
concerning.
crazy
Are you
road.
worried, Larry, that Fitbit is owned by Google and is eventually going to require a Google login?
Probably. I mean, I probably should be. I'm not so much sure about the login per se, but I am a little worried about the fact that I've got an Android phone. I use Gmail. I use Google Docs. I have a Google-owned watch. I feel like I have. They own a lot of information about me. I don't lose sleep over it, but I respect those who do worry. I mean, personally, I figured out a long time ago that a lot of corporations know a lot about me, and it even predated the internet. I mean, if you think about anybody who has insurance, uses credit cards, makes telephone calls, they're already giving up a great deal of information about themselves. Even back in the 60s, they were.
There's something very personal, though, about health information, especially weight, exercise, that kind of thing.
Well,
I think one of the concerns would be that Google would then sell that to insurance companies.
Right. Well, in fact, what really disturbs me is I think I got a note from my insurance company telling me that if I installed a certain gizmo in my car,
that's right,
I could get a discount
safe
for being
driver
a good
discount.
driver.
Yeah.
Which means really I'm getting a penalty for being a bad driver if the opposite is true.
Well,
and of course, like you, Leo, I drive a pretty high-tech electric car. I know you've got
it's monitoring you. Your
Mustang,
Tesla's monitoring you like crazily. Yeah.
Oh, they know. I mean, they know everything about me. Elon probably knows more about me than Sundar does.
I remember when our Model X, Lisa said, a couple of times now I've gone into forward and it's gone backward. And I called them and they said, well, let's look at the logs. No, you were in backward. They actually knew at that exact time what was going on, which didn't exactly reassure me. I mean, it kind of, and we know this, Elon, not Elon, but Tesla has a log of everything that's going on in that vehicle at all times. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's amazing. I
guess with Google, you'd have to think that it would be such a problem for their business if it came out that they were using that information, that they probably bend over backwards to protect it.
I don't think it would. I don't think Americans...
They don't care.
No, because as long as they're getting services for quote unquote free, a lot of people say, oh, well, I get this for free, so I don't care how they're collecting the data. That's just
the people we talk to, the people on our shows, the people who listen to our shows all care.
Yeah, I mean, we care.
That's a weird subset.
Do they really care?
We care. We may, but
I've always.
Well, we make choices. We say we care, but if we're used to an ecosystem and if we like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or whatever device it is, we're going to rationalize it in order to keep using it. Yeah. And the other thing to me that this tells us is, and we know this because companies get acquired all the time. Like, let's say you have a product that you really love. Maybe it was a Nest. Maybe it was a Fitbit. Oh, interestingly, both acquired by Google. But you bought those things before they were acquired. Whatever feeling you have about the company and whatever sort of emotional squishies you have, that's irrelevant because that company could be acquired and your data is completely out of your control from the moment that you provide it to whomever you're providing. And I think that's the lesson that I wish people would take from these acquisitions.
And if you really want to get paranoid, because a lot of people are concerned about the government getting information about them, there are ways that the government can get into corporate databases. They're called subpoenas and warrants. And there are ways that the government can change, as the Italians are finding out today, and as we found out in 2016 and could in the future. So you do have to be concerned about the vast array of data that's out there about you. And I think I'm one of the people that like to talk about it. As Connect Safely, we write books and articles about privacy all the time. But I have to confess that if you look at my behavior, I'm not doing much to protect my privacy.
That's probably true of all of us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're concerned, but we don't act upon our concern.
So we have an Apple TV at home. That's our primary vector for watching television. And because you can hit all your different streaming services and YouTube. And over the pandemic, one of our favorite family activities was to watch YouTube together. We'd pick out videos. We'd go into weird deep dives.
That's cute.
So for a long time, we were doing it while not being logged into YouTube. And part of the fun was seeing the algorithm try to figure out what this unknown. But what we found is after a while, the history of what we were watching would hard reset. And it would start serving up all sorts of different stuff. And I thought, okay, maybe this is behavior that's actually meant to incentivize us to log in or to create an account, because this way the algorithm could serve us.
You want better recommendations.
Exactly. And by YouTube continually wiping the slate of an anonymous user clean, you don't get the benefit of the fun of going down wormholes in YouTube. Instead, you're incentivized to put your profile on there so that you can get your sweet algorithm fix and they can get the data on you.
That brings us to a very interesting story about YouTube in a recent study from Mozilla. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. What a great panel. We've learned everything from fig syrup to what was that thing in strawberries? No, maybe we should.
No, we're not talking about
that. Larry Maggot is here from connectsafely.org. Do you still do some stuff for radio?
Oh, yeah, I do 2 segments a week. It's called the Connect Safely Report on CBS News, and it's heard in more than 50 markets, so it's doing pretty well.
Also from radio, the Texas Standard. It's great to have Shelley Brisbane on. I can't believe we've never had you on Twit. I totally apologize.
I know, Leo, and it doesn't hurt my feelings at all because you've had all my friends on Twit. Everybody I know
we've been
just tech, including Lisa. Hello, have been on Twit, and so I'm super excited to be here. And maybe I should talk to Larry about being a guest on the Texas Standard because we talk about privacy on the show occasionally. And tech, I'm in charge of covering tech stuff.
Shelley, you're like
qualified. Look at I've got a good microphone, so I'm obviously qualified.
There you go. All right,
Shelley is like the sweetheart of a Samoa cookie. I've been nibbling around the edges, saving you.
Thanks, Leo.
For last.
That is
Speaking of Samoas,
awesome.
Our Girl Scout cookie fan, Lisa Schmeiser, she has Girl Scouts.
Girl Scout cookie
She's also a
connection,
Girl Scout
yes.
leader. Yeah, editor-in-chief now of a new place, No Jitter.
Yes.
What is No Jitter?
So No Jitter is a website that covers communication, the whole stack. We own the stack, all the way from plain old telephony wires up to unified communication platforms and the ways that people can communicate, connect, and collaborate on those platforms.
Is it mostly enterprise focused?
You know what? Ostensibly, yes, but an enterprise is only as good as the people inside it and are working together. And so we're focusing a little bit more on how people work inside these places and how human behavior shapes technology and vice versa.
This is great, actually.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm really liking the stories I'm seeing here. Yeah. Well, it's great to have all three of you. Our show today brought to you by Shopify. Oh, it's the sound of another sale on Shopify. Grow your business with Shopify. Shopify unlocks the opportunities your business offers to more people every day. And this is important. It's more than just a store. Shopify lets you connect with your customers. You can sell in multiple places: web, mobile, social media, online marketplaces, even brick and mortar locations and pop-up shops. Shopify helps you drive sales by tirelessly reinventing the tools of growth for millions of businesses. This is, after all, what they do. This is their focus. And it's why so many people trust Shopify to help them succeed every day. You'll also love it because Shopify helps you get the job done, manage your day-to-day with thousands of integrations, third-party apps, everything from on-demand printing to accounting, advanced chatbots, and beyond. Shopify is so well known that everybody works with Shopify, and that's really the beauty of using a platform like Shopify. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business. This is transformational technology. This is what's made the world, I think, a better place. So upstarts and startups and established businesses alike can sell everywhere. Did you know that every 28 seconds an entrepreneur makes their first sale on Shopify? Every 28 seconds, somebody makes their first sale on Shopify. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Synchronize online, conduct in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Shopify. Lisa went to a Halloween festival. A lot of local artists and talent. Shopify was everywhere because it's the easiest way to do that, even in person. They've got the tools and resources to make it easy for any business to succeed, from down the street to around the globe. And nowadays, if you are a down the street business, you have a global marketplace you can take advantage of. Thanks to Shopify, it powers millions of businesses from that first sale to full scale. You can reach customers online across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps. I have to say, Shopify on Instagram is so good that not a night goes by that I haven't purchased something in the middle of the night on Shopify. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. Gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting of conversion rates, profit margins, and more. Information is power, especially if you're selling online. There's no reason to be in the dark. Shopify instantly lets you accept all major payment methods, of course. It's more than a store. Shopify grows with you. So supercharge your knowledge, your sales, your success. Go to shopify.com/twit, all lowercase, to start your free trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. SHOPIFY, shopify.com/TWIT, all lowercase. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/twit right now. Shopify! It's another sale. I love it. Steve Gibson has sound effects in his studio. Every once in a while, we'll hear a yabba dabba doo, which means that he has sold another copy of his software as SpinRite. I love it. He's got, I think it's mostly Fred Flintstone's sounds. So we were talking about YouTube and the YouTube algorithm. Of course, a lot of people complain that the YouTube algorithm drives you towards extremism. Mm-hmm. You start, you watch a channel about how to make a margarita with no animal products in it, mm-hmm. and pretty soon, it's hardcore veganism videos, and pretty soon you're invading chicken farms. I think that's pretty. I mean, I think it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we certainly observed it when we were logging into YouTube anonymously. It was a little disorienting.
Even anonymously, it's still pushing you in a direction.
It does.
Because its goal is, it's not doing it on purpose. It's not somebody's written a program saying turn everybody into Nazis. It's mm-hmm. optimizing for engagement.
Yeah, right. And the problem is that engagement is context neutral.
Right.
Because you just take a look at
how people... As long as you keep watching.
Well, if you're watching, are you clicking like and subscribe?
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing. This is a Mozilla study. Mm-hmm. They took video recommendations data from more than 20,000 YouTube users. Now, remember, this is from Mozilla, mm-hmm. a Chrome competitor, right? They're mm-hmm. not fans of Google. But,
admirably understated.
Yeah. So they actually found that when you hit the buttons like the down mm-hmm. thumb or dislike, not interested, even things like stop recommending this channel mm-hmm. or remove this from my watch history, it did almost nothing. According to Mozilla, even at their best, those buttons still allow through more than half of the recommendations you said you don't want. At their worst, the buttons do almost nothing to block similar videos.
I'm curious to know how often people use those different features, the dislike button and the don't show me this channel. I find that I don't unless I really have a very negative reaction, or if it's if it's really a kind of content, if it's hardcore XYZ and it's extremist, I'll probably do it. But if it's just a little annoying, I'll move on to the next thing and I won't necessarily think critically. And so I'd be interested to know whether that algorithm behavior is even trainable based on how much those options are used.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's why it doesn't work, is because YouTube's learned, hey, no point in paying attention to that.
You raise a really good point also about how they did this study, which is you have to look at the motivation for why people might hit those don't show us buttons.
So the people that they were monitoring were using a browser extension from Mozilla called what is it called? Regrets? No, Regrets Reporter.
Oh, my Lord.
Regrets Reporter. So I think it's a self-selecting, somewhat of a self-selecting group. Okay. Yeah. So the idea is Regrets Reporter helps you eliminate harmful YouTube recommendations and avoid harmful content. You might put this on your kid's browser, for instance. It does work with Chrome as well as Firefox. And so I guess what the data they got back was they're seeing people click this button. I think it's important. Honestly, I take it seriously when I'm reading Apple News or Google News or looking at YouTube. I feel like it's important for me to give them the signals when I see something I don't want to see more of.
Yeah.
I wish it worked better, but it's kind of been my experience. These signals, as strong as they should be, don't.
And it doesn't just have to be the white supremacist stuff that pops up after you watch one video on Viking history.
I don't want to see Kim Kardashian content.
Well, to give you an example, we're watching She-Hulk together as a family, and they're
Attorney at Law?
Yes, great show. And there's, of course, an episode with Madison, Why Is Not Where You Think, and she's constantly spoiling the show, The Sopranos. So we showed my daughter just the opening credit to Sopranos so you could understand the song.
On She-Hulk?
They reference The Sopranos.
They reference The Sopranos.
Yeah. Wow. So
not only do they reference it, they spoil it?
Yes.
Shocking.
So we show her the opening sequence for, the credits, which are very good and very nudie.
Yourself a gun.
Yeah. And then then my feed was flooded with 24 clips from the show.
No.
All of them around Adriana getting, not spoiling it, but all of them around assorted.
Bad things happening.
All around things happening.
Christopher!
Oh my God. Yeah, oh God. But I didn't want to see.
I interviewed her once.
Really?
Yeah, she did a podcast and they wanted to plug the podcast she was doing with her friend. And she brought up Christopher. She said, I go down the street, everybody says, say Christopher.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, distracted.
I didn't need 24 clips of her.
Well, I've noticed that with YouTube. If you watch anything, a Johnny Carson clip, you will get all the Johnny Carson.
Well, it's like Amazon's recommendations are, you've bought an air conditioner. Congratulations on your new hobby of collecting air conditioners.
Yes. Well, and there are particular streams, and I know Sopranos is one of them because I've ended up there accidentally too, where YouTube has a lot to give you. Yeah. And then there are other things. I have obscure, weird rabbit holes that I go down, and I want more because it's something odd that I've found, and there is. And so whenever there's a lot of it, and whenever it's popular, you're gonna get more of it. It's really hard to get away from it.
YouTube does it because it works.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not doing stuff because it doesn't work. What's really changed in this era is this tight feedback loop that all of these programs have, because they see everything you're doing, so they can really respond. So, I mean, I think you have to stipulate they're doing it because it works.
Well, it's interesting. I don't want to. I'm not worried about being turned into a Nazi, but I do sometimes worry about. Like, I do look at right-wing extremist websites because I want to see what they're publishing, but then I worry, am I adding to their popularity? Am I somehow helping them?
I won't go
even
to
though I'm not giving them any money.
I won't do it.
Yeah,
I won't go to the Daily Stormer. No. That just seems like a bad idea, but you need to do it for your job.
Well, I feel like I should at least look at Breitbart now and then, and some of these, I won't even mention the names of them. I don't need to promote them, but I do feel like I need to look at them. But it is true, I do worry about what benefit are they getting.
Well, I've created a separate Google account for work just for that reason. And I sometimes I'll sometimes accidentally be in my own account, and I'll be like, oh my God, I went to the wrong place.
Crazy@gmail.com. That's you, huh?
Well, again, it goes back to
Leo. Don't tell everybody.
Well, it goes back to the problem that engagement is completely divorced from context. And if these companies are tweaking their algorithms and the user experience based on the premise that engagement is the only good or the only end, it's really bad, both as a user experience thing and as a product thing in several different aspects.
It's also engagement all the way down, because it's not only YouTube doing that, the sites are creating clickbaity headlines. I mean, it goes, it's everybody is trying to grab your attention. Everybody is.
Sometimes I will actually, when I go into Google, I'll turn on my VPN, I'll go into incognito mode or in private mode, and I'll do a search, and then I'll do the same search with me logged in without the VPN. And it's amazing the differences. One of the disappointing differences is that I don't come up as often when I do a search if I'm on a VPN.
Yes. Can I just tell you, ego searches when you're not logged in are not so much fun.
Apparently Google's like, ooh, Larry, we're going to make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, DuckDuckGo doesn't like me as much as Google does. It's weird.
Actually, one of my favorite things to do on Google is take a look at what they think they know about me based on in the ads, where you can go through and they're like, oh, tweak your data so it's more this and more that. And oddly enough, I've never been a 28-year-old male military veteran. But
that you know of.
Right?
It's okay. I've never watched the Kardashians. I still get recommendations for
So
them.
this goes back to, if engagement's the greater good, how flawed is the data that they're collecting and selling? Like, it reminds me a lot of when Facebook was aggressively pushing videos, and it turned out their sales department was completely juking the stats, as they'd say on also excellent HBO show, The Wire. They're juking the stats, and you did not know, truthfully and honestly, how people were engaging with video on Facebook, but they were making all this money by saying, oh, we think it's like this. And I have to wonder, is this the same on YouTube? Is this the same on Google? At what point do you look at the data and say this data is useless because it doesn't accurately measure what people are watching? It just accurately measures engagement, which is different than sitting down and watching a video from beginning to end.
One of the lessons...
Your observation about collecting air conditioners is a good point, because every time I buy something for the next 6 months, I'm inundated, and the last thing I'm going to do is buy that again. I just bought it. Thank you very much. I don't need another air conditioner.
One of the lessons, in fact, I just read an article about this referencing The Wire, is when you decide what the stats you're going to monitor are, you are tilting the whole thing towards those stats. And that was the point of The Wire, is you juke the stats and majors become colonels, because they go, oh, all I have to do is bring down. In fact, there's a famous scene in The Wire where he tells McNulty, don't bring me any murders. We're trying to get our stats up. So I don't want to know about any murders. We want our solve rate to be higher. That's exactly the wrong result. Because you're juking the stats.
Well, there was a great Wall Street Journal piece this last week talking about salary transparency, and it's based on a study that researchers did of the National Hockey League when the salaries of every single player were published in the Montreal Gazette back in I believe it's the 70s this happened. And a bunch of economists took a look at what happened afterwards, and what they noted is that the folks who were on the lower end of the salary scale took a look at the folks on the higher end of the salary scale and noticed, hey, they're not great team players, but they're great at racking up individual stats. So I'm not going to focus on defense. I'm not going to focus on passing. I'm not going to focus on team first. I'm going to focus on racking up my stats so that I have more value to the people paying money. Consequently, the quality of play changed, but people got the people who played juke the stats got the money. And the point to the economist was, well, you can have pay transparency, or you can simply pay people what they're worth, and you have to decide worth based on, is it worth having teamwork? But this is the same thing, where once you figure out what the metrics are, everyone performs to the metrics.
So what's the solution? I mean, I've said a lot, and I think it's probably the wrong solution, but I've always, I've said it a lot anyway, is get rid of algorithms. Algorithms are the problem, right? They are in some places. I mean, I don't need an algorithm on Facebook. I want to just follow the people I follow. On Twitter, I want to follow the people I follow. I don't need you to recommend stuff based on what you think I'm interested in.
Who do algorithms serve?
Yeah, who do algorithms serve? On YouTube?
But I think it does kind of depend on the platform, because I think Facebook and Twitter, those are perfect examples of, I have chosen to follow people. That's who I want to follow. But YouTube and TikTok are examples of platforms where there's some joy in going down a rabbit hole and being shown things that you don't expect, partly because we're used to it. We've been trained to enjoy it.
Well,
but
also
partly
when you
because
have
it's the nature of that platform.
If you have a billion videos, discoverability is a problem. They're trying to solve
100%. I mean, I feel that way about television.
And if
that's
you have a lot of if you follow a lot of people, it's also a problem. So I had this situation on Facebook where I was getting bored by the fact that I kept seeing the same posts over and over again from a limited number of people. And I said, okay, I'm going to turn off that algorithm and make sure I see everything in chronological, reverse chronological order. Then I got even more bored. because I started hearing from people who I could care less about.
That's what they're saying. That's why they juke the stats.
Right. So
So
I went back to I turned the algorithm back on. My point was that I hear what you say on the negative, but at the same time, it does create, in my opinion, a slightly better experience. Although
that's why I torpedoed my own argument the moment before.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends
what is
on
the answer?
Well,
algorithms are a mechanized substitution for the curatorial experience. Because when you think about the 20th century, you had a whole lot of...
But curation doesn't scale.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's the challenge. That's what algorithms are supposed to be doing is... One of my favorite side topics is like the rise and fall of the Condé Nast publishing empire. And I will read any memoir I get my hands on about it. And most of the time it was like people got obscene amounts of money for being able to correctly put their thumb on the zeitgeist and then commodify those insights, right?
Anna Wintour at Vogue.
Anna Wintour, Graydon Carter, Tina Brown.
Classic.
David Remick. For a while, Ruth Reichel over at Gourmet. Kim France with Lucky Magazine. But again, that doesn't scale and you can't make great whoopsie loads of cash from it. Algorithms are supposed to be doing that kind of curatorial work that give you a surprising combination of things that surprise and delight you. But
so is an algorithm better than Tina Brown?
No. But that's the thing is
no, that's the problem.
Because with a human, you're paying for discernment. They're curating things, but that's based on that person's own experience and based on that person's knowledge of the area, whether it's gourmet food or whether it's culture or fashion or whatever it is. And an algorithm is not going to do that. An algorithm is going to present me literal clips from The Sopranos and Joe Bob's podcast and the podcast of the woman who said Christopher all at once, and I'm not going to be able to make a choice unless I watch them all. And then the algorithm is going to say, "Oh, give her more of all of it."
Yeah, because taste and discernment don't scale, but they're also tremendously lucrative. They're what keeps Larry from getting bored with his speech.
As Condé Nast knows, because they don't know what they're going to do when Anna Wintour retires.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's it. Vogue rises and falls on her shoulders. And without her, that's fashion is a very good example of that because it's so tastemaker driven.
Well, it's another industry that's in tremendous disruption right now too. I feel like we're going to have an open revolt in the chat room where they're like, we came here to talk about technology.
But we are talking about technology.
It is technology.
This is exactly
how technology works, how it behaves for human beings.
Yeah.
Impact on every single industry in the world, including fashion.
But it's actually been a huge problem in retail over the last few years because you haven't been able to move the needle or have a big breakout in trend shifting since every trend happens everywhere all at once now, thanks to the micro communities that aggregate around different algorithms driven through social media.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've always thought the chat was revolting. So it's nothing.
Well, I find you
new.
delightful.
Hi, chat.
Yeah. No, I'm just teasing.
Oh boy, you're in trouble.
I am in big trouble. Adobe, $20 billion to save its business, I think, right? By buying Figma, a company that's annual recurring revenue is a mere $400 million. Here's a opinion piece in The Observer from this week by John Naughton. Adobe can't Photoshop out the fact that its $20 billion Figma deal is a naked land grab. The software giant paying vastly over the odds for a small but strategically threatening company should alarm U.S. regulators. Of course, this acquisition looks a lot like Facebook buying Instagram or WhatsApp, right? The idea being they're eating our lunch. It doesn't make any sense to pay $20 billion for a company that's never, it's going to take more than 20 years to pay back that investment. But otherwise, we're dead. Should the FTC allow this acquisition to go through, or is it a chance for them to make up for their mistake with Instagram? Lisa?
That's a good question. Since Figma solves a problem for a lot of Adobe users, which is there are too many things that I don't need.
Yeah, people who love Figma are very unhappy about the acquisition.
If you've ever used InDesign, it can be tremendously powerful if you've dedicated your life to InDesign.
Yes.
If
it's lock-in, though, for an InDesign expert.
If you've taken the vows and joined the order and immersed yourself, it's great. But it's a problem similar to Microsoft's problem where there are so many functions that you're like, I just want to do this simple workflow. Please let me do that. Figma solved this problem, and Figma's locked down the user experience.
People love it.
Well, it sounds to me very similar to...
It's also timely because of COVID. It's a collaborative design environment. Right?
Yeah, and it sounds to me really similar Microsoft made a failed bid for Slack
Right.
because they correctly guessed that, hey, this collaborative, frictionless environment that people can transpose their workflow into is something we don't have and something we need a mind share on. It's the same thing. I feel terrible for the people who like Figma and are right to worry about what this will do for them.
Should the government block it?
Can the government make a plausible case that what this is doing is
There's lots
Adobe
of
snuffing out competition?
There's Sketch, there's Canva, there are other companies doing this.
I mean, and the thing is, there's another story you had for this week too, where Slack has now introduced Canvas, which is a collaborative documenting
Well,
thing.
it does tie into that because
it's coming down to hosted collaborative processes are like a land grab right now anyway.
Yeah. Everybody and their brother's adding documents.
Yeah. Well, they're adding collaborative workflow because they all saw people using Google Docs and being like, oh, I need to get in on that action.
Even Apple's announced a new whiteboard app, which I think is their stealth entry into this collaborative space.
No,
right?
and you also know, everybody, to get back to everything we talked about, you also know that having a collaborative workspace gives people tons of raw data on how ideas get generated, iterated, manipulated.
Oh, they're not watching what we're doing, are they?
Well, but it also locks people in as customers.
Yeah.
So if I've committed as a company to, we have at work, we have the Adobe suite, mostly because we use Audition to make radio. And so we have Photoshop and use it. I can use InDesign. I don't. I make radio all day.
Right.
Yeah.
With Slack, if we've committed, we use Slack. If we commit to that document, the Canvas document thing, we're probably going to be more likely to continue a paid Slack subscription because the opportunity cost of going to something else would be high for us. And so it makes sense for the companies to do that. I don't believe it's always in the best interest, whether it's Figma or whether it's somebody who's using some other collaborative document methodology, to be locked into these platforms. But that's the way platforms are now. You don't buy software in boxes anymore.
No,
you buy
the platform.
seat licenses.
But Shelley, Audition is a good example. I used to love Audition when it was $59.
It's Adobe's
And
audio
easy to
editing
use.
program. Actually, they acquired it. It was Cool Edit Pro.
Right.
They
That's
bought
right.
it.
It used to be a great little product.
Everybody in
right?
radio used it. Yeah.
I know, and I moved over to Audacity because Audition is just too complicated and too expensive. And
That's the
overkill
Adobe
for what I need.
story. It's too
Exactly.
complicated.
Oh, right. And they've made it very Adobe. And truthfully, when we do multi-track and we put together complicated stories that are going to be multi-voice and with sound and with music, I use Audition because I like the multi-track tools. But if I'm just editing an interview that's a guest and a host, there's a tool on the Mac called Amadeus Pro that I really like. Audacity works for that. I'm not personally a fan of Audacity, but Audacity has this wonderful advantage. It's free.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the legal
And it's
arguments, but
multi-platform.
that's what I'd be most interested
It
in
also
looking
crashes half the time.
Yeah.
I can't
There's
use
that.
an editor that's going to crash on me because, if it crashes and I've lost all the work I just did, I'm going to be very unhappy.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe it's more reliable than it used to be.
Yeah.
I use TwistedWave. I'm actually hopeful for these guys because they've just started a Windows beta. Lisa's starting her own podcast and it's called Host Red Ads. I love it. And I'm teaching her to use TwistedWave so she was recording it in Apple voice memos.
Oh, no.
And then posting
how
it
to do it,
on Anchor FM, and it was left channel only, and nobody could figure out, well, I don't understand why it's only coming in one ear. And I explained the whole thing, and I showed her how in TwistedWave to make it a mono file before you upload it and all that stuff.
Oh, can I get some technical advice, Leo? Should my podcast be mono or stereo? Because they're just voice.
Yeah, that's why I make
Is there
ours
any
mono.
reason to go
Just put it in
stereo?
mono. Your files are small too. Make them mono.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
but
you
I
cut the
most-
file size in half.
Yeah, right.
So a 64 kilobit mono is the same quality as 128 kilobit stereo. So that's one. I think, Shelley, you can weigh in on this, but we're all radio people except for you, Lisa. Have you done radio?
I wish I could.
You should. You have a beautiful
I would
voice.
love to. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
good. It's easy,
Have me on,
actually.
Larry.
I think mono punches through better. So remember the Beatles when they first recorded, it was all mono. And then they made terrible stereo mixes in the
they
U.S.
went crazy with stereo, yeah.
They were awful.
Yeah.
And the Beatles never liked that. And in fact, Beatles collectors now prize those original mono versions of many of the first Beatles albums because that's how they were mixed. And they punch through. So I think one of the things this is completely far afield. I apologize. But I think one of the things really important for voice-only communications is that you're going to be listening in all sorts of adverse environments. The car, while you're washing the dishes, walking down the street with sirens going by. And so it's really important that the voice punches through. When I used to do AM radio, we'd compress the hell out of it. That's the boss radio sound, right? But that's the reason, so that it's not actually louder, but it feels more present. And I think mono gives you some of that. I also think you should compress it, to be honest with you. But.
Yeah. So I have arguments on both sides. The thing about mono is, especially if you're doing a podcast, podcasters have a wide variety of audio quality in their podcasts. Right. And if you do stereo, there's more of an opportunity for that badness to appear. And what Leo says about it punching through in mono makes sense. I will do stereo separations if I have like 4 or 5 guests on my show.
That makes sense. Sure.
And it does. And I'll tell you, that's another thing that I found out when I started hanging out with blind podcasters, that a lot of blind folks like to hear a stereo mix of multiple voices because it gives this sort of realistic sound of, I'm over here on the left and Larry's on the right and Leo's a little bit left center and Lisa's right center. And it can be kind of a cool effect. You can go too far. Like there used to be a sort of a category of podcasting where they call them sound seeing tours, and people would go around and do their environments,
You're walking down the street. Yeah, and
you'd have binaural microphones and it would drive you crazy.
Yeah.
I just think people got tired of weird sounding binaural microphones, because it was cool for a while. Then it was like, okay, I get it. There's a street and there's a person going by on the right and there's a car on the left, and it's just a little much,
How funny. I completely forgot about that. That was in the...
I have to think about that. I'm a podcast
old-timer, Leo.
Yeah.
Because when I record, I always record the guest in one channel and me in the other. So we are stereo to begin with. But does the guest really need to be, sitting all the way to my left or all the way to my right?
No, you want to pan at extremes.
No, but you can separately, do their levels and process their audio separately from your own.
John, we're stereo, right? But we don't pan people's mics. So we probably should, but everybody's all kind of coming in the same place. There are reasons not to do that. If you're in the car, for instance, all you're going to get with too much space. It's great if you're listening to headphones or a good sound system, but in a car, some people are going to be louder than other people. It's not going to make a lot of sense. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I prefer to make it sound like an AM Boss Jock from 1968. That's what I'm going for.
Wolfman Jack is my announcer.
All right, everybody. We're going to do it. So... But we did a spatial audio podcast many years ago that was really cool. Dolby. It's easy to confuse the two. Doubly had a technology they called Dolby headphone that didn't take off. It's gone now. But it was kind of like the Atmos mix that they do now. That's what spatial is an Atmos mix, where you can place sounds anywhere in a sound stage. And we did a whole show using a Dolby headphone that nobody could listen to, because unless you had a Dolby headphone decoder, it didn't make any sense. Now that spatial's big, maybe we should do spatial mixes of our shows. I don't know. What do you think, Shelley? Would you?
I think that would be really trippy, and I probably would just go back to mono myself.
Yeah. Shelley's coming in from the upper right.
Right.
Lisa's in the lower left. I'm behind you, and Larry's in front of you.
Look out.
It doesn't work in my house because I have an Eichler with a pretty tall ceiling, and the Atmos gets just drowned out in there.
You can't have Atmos. You need to have a flat, low, reflective ceiling, unless you put speakers up there and then you make them loud enough so that it's going to work. But that seems
one more thing for my wife to get.
Don't do that in the Eichler.
Sound design your house. That's a little much, probably.
That's another point. Is how are people listening? So I'm going to guess a lot of people are listening on mono speakers, right? They're listening on
or headphones in the car walking.
I guess earbuds. Yeah, you're right.
Mono speakers. I mean, think about voice assistants. They're listening on A-Lady boxes and Google boxes, and so even. Because we've gone to, car radios used to be mono. They're not anymore. There are a lot of people, most people have access to some sort of stereo-based audio if they want to listen to it. But how do we really listen to it? I listen to my show every day on a mono speaker.
Yeah,
because that's what I have.
It's easy.
Yeah,
it's
easy.
I'm just lazy. If I had energy, I would do a soundscape. I would, when I was a younger radio guy, I used to love to mix in stuff, and I remember
like the birds chirping in the background if you're doing
or you know,
yeah.
I mean, we do that when we make
mixes.
If I go out and I interview somebody,
I love that.
or several people, and we get ambient sound. We lay a track underneath. It's the birds chirping or the gravel crunching or whatever, and you fade that in and you fade it out, and it sounds really great. But you also have to be we record those in, we do multi-track and then we mix them down to stereo, and they end up on the show in stereo. Most people don't get most of it, but some people are going to hear the subtleties of it, and it's fun to do as long as you don't go crazy with it.
And as long as you're doing it honestly, as long as the natural sound is actually coming from where you are and not imported from another world.
We wouldn't do that.
No, of course you wouldn't.
I
had to take a whole ethics class about that.
Well, that's because you're doing journalism. But I mean, there's also a whole sphere of shows that could be considered fiction, like Serial.
Oh, yeah.
and then
like Fox News, for example.
And then you could, or Twit. And then you could.
Night Vale, radio drama.
Night Vale's a good example. There are actually quite a few.
Because they've repopularized radio drama as a podcast. So.
I love that. And I think the problem is it's a huge amount of work, and it's very time consuming.
It's almost like content doesn't scale. That you need.
It's handcrafted.
Well, that's it's
well,
really
they call it sound design, and I mean you don't. There are people who are quite expert at it and take a lot of care. And for 90% of the content that's out there, it's not needed. But it's like special effects in video. It's that extra oomph that you add to content that needs it, but don't put it on my little radio stories about voting by mail or whatever it is I'm writing.
I actually made that conscious decision because I love that. And if I didn't have to make a living and I didn't have any other interests in the world, I might spend a lot of time doing sound design and creating, like Ken Nordine's soundscapes and stuff.
Oh, my God. Love Ken Nordine. I like turning younger people on to Ken Nordine because people have never heard of him, and he's amazing.
Amazing.
One of the things I learned from listening to the original series of Serial was all of the things that I used to do to make my podcast quote better were the very things that they weren't doing. Like I would cut out pauses and they would put in pauses. And I would try to avoid ums and ahs and all these things. And it turns out it can actually add to the attentiveness of what you're doing.
I've heard
it's a thin line because it can sound affected and it can sound a little precious and a bit different. I mean, like that's a very sort of public radio kind of sound.
I'm glad you said it, so I didn't have. I'm glad you guys said it before.
In fact, Ira says there's 45-second beats, and we edit it for those 45-second beats, and we put in pauses.
And our show is fairly new. I haven't been around for the entirety of the show, but when they debuted the show 7 years ago, one of the goals was we're public radio, but we're not trying to sound like the NPR mothership. We want to sound like what Texas sounds like. And that doesn't mean everybody says y'all all the time. It just means that there's a little more of a laid back sort of conversational aspect to it, but we're not going the other direction and being unserious or trying to be precious about sounding too folksy and too authentic. And it's a line, and you just make editorial decisions about how do you want your show to sound and what's authenticity. That's what it gets down to, is like your perception of authenticity.
So that was kind of the decision I made, is that we want to make we do this as live as possible. It's one of the reasons we do it live with a live chat room, and we used to have a live audience, so that it's not edited, it's not sound design, it's the opposite. And for the content that we're doing, I thought that was the best way to do it. And also because I come from a live radio background. But let's introduce people to Ken Nordine. So he was he from, I think, Chicago?
Chicago, I think, yeah.
Radio personality who had a very beautiful voice and was very influenced by the 50s jazz, improvisation, hipster stuff. There's actually a ton of Ken Nordine stuff on YouTube. I hope this isn't going to get us taken down. Let me play just...
I was going to say, what rabbit holes are going to take you down, Leo?
Well, it's all right. We're already in the rabbit hole. This is just... I'll play just a few seconds of this. This is from his Word Jazz album. It's called What Time Is It? Just you'll get an immediate idea of what we're talking about here.
There was this guy who was a regular guy who lived a regular life. Got up 7:30 every morning. Had the same breakfast. Kissed the same wife.
I'll leave this as an exercise for the listener to pursue that. Look up Ken Nordine, and you can find a lot of stuff.
I want to know what his audio settings are. I'm so curious.
Well, he had a beautiful, beautiful voice.
I know he did, but there's some processing in there, and it's great.
Yeah. This is ultra high fidelity, it says. Doesn't say stereo, however.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Ultra, good word.
Ultra high. He was, maybe you might say, I think I know that voice.
He did ads too.
He did a very famous, and I'm going to play a little bit of it, Levi's jeans ad.
Yes.
Oh, somebody mentioned that in the chat.
That was extremely popular in I want to say
early 70s?
Early 70s, maybe? Let's play it. This is very trippy.
There was a stranger who came into our town. He was tall and had eyes that could look right to the bottom of you. We might have welcomed him, except for one thing. His pants.
I'll leave you wondering.
That commercial's got a real Ralph Bashki feel to it.
It did the animation
with the rotoscoping and the animation. Oh
yeah,
wow!
It was a Levi's commercial.
Now I want to watch.
Very
the whole
trippy.
thing.
Yeah, the late legendary Ken Nordine, who does. I agree with you, Shelley. Deserves a lot more attention.
This is a delight.
Let's take a little break. We'll come back. There is a lot more to talk about, and we're just getting to the heart of the matter. But first, since you were talking about a VPN and protecting yourself online, Larry, I thought I'd mention our VPN sponsor, Expressvpn. It's the only VPN I use. It's the one I trust. People ask me all the time, how do you know that you could trust Expressvpn? This is important. The reason you will use a VPN, of course, is there's really three good reasons to use a VPN. To keep people from, hacking you, watching what you're doing at a coffee shop. That's how we started using VPNs. Actually, we started them in business, right? So that you could use the company network safely, even if you weren't on premises. You also use it, sometimes people use it for geographic relocation, so you can watch videos on Netflix UK or watch all the manga you want on Netflix Japan. But the reason a lot of people these days use it, and the reason you're using it, Larry, is for privacy. But it's important to understand that, yes, your ISP can't see what you're doing. You're hiding yourself. You're using a different IP address when you visit a website. But the people who can see what you're doing are the VPN company, the server you're coming out of. So it's very important that you trust the VPN provider. ExpressVPN, I trust them implicitly. Now, of course, they have the third-party audits, but they've actually engineered their own VPN protocol. It's called Lightway, to keep your data secure without sacrificing speed. And we know that they don't do any logging. They use, and there was just an article about this on Bleeping Computer, a custom Debian distribution that wipes itself every day. Every reboot, everything's wiped from the drive. There's nothing there in the logs. And it launches its VPN server in memory, in RAM, and it's sandboxed, so it can't write to the drive. So they take all these extra steps to make sure that there is zero logging. They are not keeping track of what you're doing. They couldn't, even if they wanted to. ExpressVPN is awesome. It is the way to protect yourself online. They do their own special protocol. ExpressVPN is so fast, you can put it on your router. It actually works on a number of routers. The whole family protected, they won't even know because there's no speed degradation. It's really awesome. This level of bespoke technology is what allows ExpressVPN to provide superior speeds and enhanced privacy and protection. They really care. They work really hard. And Lightway, their own protocol, is open source. Of course, it's been audited by third parties. You can look at it yourself. So if you're, that's one way. I think you've got to use software that's open source if you want to protect your security and privacy. Otherwise, who knows what kind of backdoors are in there. Not with ExpressVPN. It's 2022, folks. In case you didn't know, you need to use a VPN when you go online. You need to protect your privacy and your security. If you don't have one yet, even if you do, I want you to go to expressvpn.com/twit. When you buy a one-year package, they're going to give you 3 extra months free. That brings it down to below $7 a month. I think that's a very fair price for what you get. Please don't use free VPNs, because if they're not charging you, they're finding another way to make money. expressvpn.com/twit. And read up on all the technologies and all the things they're doing that will, I think, reassure you, as it has me, that these guys are going the extra mile to give you a VPN that is truly private and secure. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of our show. They've been a longtime supporter of the network. Only VPN I use and trust, expressvpn.com. Thank you, ExpressVPN. All right. Let's see here. We never really did decide whether Figma should be, the Figma acquisition should be allowed, but
that's for the lawyers.
That's up to the lawyers.
I would love to see the argument for it, where they're saying this represents a substantial threat to the market.
We were talking about Serial, the Serial podcast. That's in the news this week because the subject of the very first series was released from prison.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's the most success any podcast has ever achieved. To actually get somebody. So what's the story? Because I did not listen to Serial. His name is Adnan Syed. He was a high school student when he was convicted of murdering his high school sweetheart. He's been serving a life sentence. The judge said, based on the revelations from Serial, that the prosecution in the original trial withheld evidence, didn't give him a fair trial. His own attorney, who has since passed, was maybe a little suspect as well. The judge didn't say, "I acquit you, go be free." He just said, "We need to give you a new trial. In the interest of justice and fairness, you need a new trial." Now, he may not ever get tried again. Prosecutors have 30 days to decide if they're going to proceed with a new trial or just drop the charges. He's currently at home detention. Of course, the family of his high school sweetheart, Hae-Min Lee, is very unhappy because they believe he did it. Now, I didn't listen to anybody who's listened to Serial.
Yeah, I listened to a lot of this episodes, yeah.
What do you think?
Well, based on the episodes, and I've not independently researched the case, so I want to be respectful of the family's concerns, but based on the podcast, it seemed like definitely he's due a new trial because there was a lot of questions about whether someone else might have done it. They presented a lot of evidence, which I think most juries would agree would certainly put into question this guy's guilt. And yet he has been sitting in prison all this year. So it's a great example of, I don't know whether you call it investigative journalism or advocacy journalism. I don't believe that the Serial podcast took a position on guilt or innocence, but it kind of made the case that this guy probably at least deserves another trial, and I'm glad he's getting one.
That seems fair. That seems fair. They're not saying he's innocent, although really I'm told that the joy of listening to this Serial was debating. Oh, he didn't do it. Oh, he did it. No, he definitely didn't. No, he didn't do it.
Yeah, you go back and forth.
Yeah. 12 episodes back in 2014. The New York Times has since purchased Serial. So they're putting out a new episode called Adnan is Out. Sarah Koenig, who did produce it, really, I think in some ways, podcasting was already 10 years old by the time she did this, but in some ways put podcasting on the map.
It was huge. It actually had a big impact on CBS because I've been pushing podcasting at CBS since the 90s, and they would basically laugh at me back then. And I think Serial really opened up the eyes of the entire broadcast industry that this technology, needs to be explored. So it was
and it's certainly
an audience that's worth courting, I think, is what it proved.
Well, and it was huge. Yeah. It was millions. It was in the millions. So I mean, that was that's a substantial number. It also created a wave, for better or worse, of true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
Everybody was copying this, right?
I wonder if Serial came around at the right place in the right time, but it also was a sweet spot for people who are already habituated to crime as a narrative, like you have on Law and Order shows or the shows on the CSI shows or what is that show that Keith Morris Dateline?
Dateline. Oh,
yeah,
it's so much better.
I mean,
I hate Dateline.
I always think of Bill Hader's impersonation of Keith Morris, which is just damaging because I'm sure Keith Morris is a fine journalist, but all I can see is Bill Hader. Ow! But Americans as an audience love thinking of crime as a form of entertainment, whether it's puzzle box mystery solving or straightforward morality
The
plays.
Brits do too.
Yeah.
I mean, British, you watch Brit TV, they're all over this kind of stuff.
True crime is this huge element of podcasting now. And there's actually been a fair bit of backlash to Serial because there are people who actually believe that Serial did not give Adnan Syed a fair shake in terms of there's some evidence on Serial that has since been disputed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's some of the backlash that sort of came out this week. And I'm not really up on all of that. I was a little surprised by it. But what's interesting about that is just the degree to which the perception is that they were going after a dramatic narrative and didn't necessarily do all of the homework that they should have. And there's been criticism of the New York Times that they didn't do updates sooner. So, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And I think the true crime aspect of it and the degree to which the true crime fascination is kind of a gentrified, let's appeal to a certain demographic of people who are interested in crime podcasts is sort of an unfortunate side effect of it.
And again, I didn't and still haven't listened to it. I probably should. But it strikes me, Sarah Koenig was a producer on This American Life, which is, I've always said, the best radio show ever made. And except for the Texas Standard, which is a fabulous
Thanks, Leo. You can come on, too.
But I think the California Report is a really great audio journalism show, too.
I also got the sense that her focus in Serial was telling a good story. It wasn't, and that's what's true about This American Life as well. It's not journalism in the sense of, well, we want to present you with the facts. It was, let's make, there were cliffhangers. Let's make a gripping story. And that's when journalism bleeds into fiction or storytelling. And I don't know if I like that.
Well, it's the New Yorker has done that with some long form reporting too.
Yeah.
The qualm I'd throw up there is when you reduce reporting, not reduce, but when you include the element of entertainment in reporting. Sometimes the facts get in the way of a good story.
Because you focus on, is this entertaining? Right?
Yeah.
Well, and have you hit your cliffhanger? You have X number of episodes, maybe it's 13, whatever the series is. Are you going to have a cliffhanger for every one of those episodes? And how are you going to come to a stop, especially if the person you're focusing on is in jail? And don't forget, the person who lost her life still lost her life. However your show comes out, and whether this person is innocent or guilty, that family doesn't have a resolution yet.
Right.
I would love a podcast from the perspective of the people who are like, my loved one was turned into fodder for a true crime podcast.
Oh, wow. Wouldn't that be a show?
Well, we don't see those folks who are like, my loved one had this terrible ending. The complexity of who they were has been reduced to them being the object of someone else's story that is being presented as more interesting, and I have to constantly relitigate this experience as this podcast comes out every week. Like, if you're going to have a true crime universe, you should point out the ripple effects, I think. It shouldn't just be these stories about, did so-and-so do it? Pause.
But you remember Dateline's To Catch a Predator series back in the late, I think it was the early 2000s, and it ended when one of their suspects committed suicide.
Yeah.
They showed up with a vigilante squad, and the guy killed himself. And it probably wouldn't have happened if they let the police investigate that alleged child predator rather than having a bunch of vigilantes and not particularly careful journalists do it.
I mean, we've seen citizen journalism and the ugly side of it on Reddit many times,
Yes.
So
the election was stolen. And we can prove it.
So I just, it's certainly painted as, in fiction and nonfiction and journalism, the case that the police sometimes, this is the Juking the Stats, are more interested in finding a resolution than finding the actual culprit. I don't know how true that is. If I were a police officer, I would not be looking for resolution unless I was sure that that was the person who did it, because then you're letting the person who did it walk free. Right? That's bad. But I don't know. So that's one thing. You get the impression that, prosecutors and the police are just looking for their stats. They're not trying to solve the crime.
Burden of proof is it can be an onerous duty. If you've ever gone to jury duty for a criminal trial, you will sit there and the judge and the prosecutor will tell you, our job, that owing to the premise that you are innocent until found guilty, it is the burden of the prosecution to have to say this evidence points to this conclusion, and it cannot be refuted
beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly. That's a high bar to clear. And I'm going to argue that in some ways it's good that it's a high bar.
It's designed that way.
But what we saw...
Is it better? Is it?
But
which
what we
is worse?
see, though, is people who are trying to figure out ways to either walk around the bar or say, okay, we can like carefully lift a leg over the bar in a technicality.
Is it worse to falsely convict somebody of a crime, or worse to let a criminal go free? And I think as a country, we have decided it's better to err on the side of caution and not imprison somebody falsely.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means some criminals go free. But I think a lot of police and prosecutors don't like that idea either.
Well, it's,
you know what
imagine
also really
sitting all that time into doing your job and you're like, oh man, like you don't. That would be the flip side of this is, did you follow the Sherry Papini case, the woman who faked her own kidnapping up in Redding, California?
Yeah.
So this woman back in 2016 disappears, and
it was a hoax.
Yeah, a month later, she's like, I was kidnapped by targeted minorities here, and it was terrible. They tortured me and they branded me, and it turned out that she and an ex-boyfriend had cooked up the whole thing.
By the way, she's going to jail now. Yeah,
she is. She got sentenced this past week. The video of her interrogation has hit YouTube. And I'm not proud of this. I was doing some really tedious inbox cleaning out, and I had it playing in the background just because I was kind of curious. But listening to the process of interrogation, where she's spinning her tail for the cops, and every time she didn't have an answer to a question, she's like, I just wanted to go home to my kids, and watching them patiently and carefully attack her story from different angles and ask questions and tell her what they knew.
That's a real skill, isn't it?
And they were non-reactive, and they were so calm and so patient, and they kept trying to establish a rapport. And it hit me, the sheer volume of work that goes into developing those skills and being able to use them is really phenomenal. What's worrying, though, is how many people have those experiences where they don't have folks who have that kind of experience coming in with them. Like, that, I think, is where the real risk is that we just don't have the people, the skill, and the time that we need to make sure that we are all presumed innocent.
Yeah, and you have racial bias, or you have other biases that impact all elements, whether it be the prosecutors, the police, who the victim is, who the defendant is, and all of those things. You know, the care that's taken is dependent on care, basically, and it's dependent on the time and the support that you have from the people that are over you, and whether you're being pressured, and frankly, if it's a crime that has a victim, by the victim's family, because the victim's family is desperate to solve this crime and find out who's done it. And so whether the pressure is that there's too much, that there's a quota or system, or whether there's a pressure that there's a mother who really wants to know who took her daughter's life, that's a difficult challenge for law enforcement.
Further made difficult by a true crime podcast about the whole thing, stirring up questions maybe that don't deserve to be asked. So, I know
a lot about this because I watch Murders in the Building on television. I've learned all about
and
the
Martin Short's
tension
excellent show
educate
about
us.
It is such a love letter to a very specific type of New York experience, isn't it?
It's also, I think, all about podcasting and about true crime podcasting.
Absolutely.
I hate shows
and
that
also
run
the
networks I
interface
don't
between
have.
the
I just want you
podcast
to know that.
They all have such great apartments, though. That's what kills me.
I know. The aesthetics of that show.
Doesn't everybody in television have great apartments? I mean,
yes.
You ever seen a
Well,
really
they do.
terrible apartment? And
I have been in Steve Martin's apartment on the just off Central Park West, and it is very nice.
that's
How was the art? Apparently
the art's great. I actually asked him to give me a tour, and he was happy to do so.
Oh,
you go in
nice.
his library, which is a beautiful, exactly as you'd imagine it, book-lined mahogany library, leather couches, and there's not one, but two David Hockneys on the wall. It's like, okay, fine. We're sitting there, we're
That's
having
why he's
dinner.
Steve
I said,
Martin.
is that a Picasso? He said, yeah.
I like the
Oh, yeah.
Very nice. And I remember standing looking out at Central Park, and he said, yeah. Actually, I don't know if I should say this out loud. Oh, what the hell? You don't know Steve. He said, when we bought this place, my first wife said, we really got to have a Central Park view. And he said, no, we don't need a Central Park view. He said, I'm glad we got the Central Park view.
Yeah.
I'll remember that the next time I buy an apartment in New York.
Yeah, get the Central Park view if
I
you
don't know.
can.
You live in an Eichler. You're doing good.
Yeah, Eichler's not bad. Don't Eichlers have internal courtyards that are?
By the way, my Eichler is 300,000 square feet. In case
300,000
are listening.
300.
Well,
is that Donald Trump reckoning?
I want to be able to get $1 billion loan.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
But don't tell the IRS I said that.
No, it's 300 for the IRS, right?
Get the Central Park view, even if it's an Eichler. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Just trying to imagine the warping of time and space you'd have to go into to get that.
All right, let's take.
I learned to exaggerate from Letitia
James.
Letitia James. She taught me how you're supposed to do this.
Let's take a little break. I'm having fun with you guys. We're going to talk more about TV, movies. Shelley, you do a TV movie podcast, right?
I do a classic movie podcast.
Oh, even better.
Really? I love classic movies.
Like a TCM podcast.
Indeed. It's called Lions, Towers, and Shields. And we talk Thank you, Leo. I appreciate it. We talk about one classic movie each episode, and I've had the pleasure of having Lisa as a guest on several episodes.
Do you put the pellet and the pestle and the mortar with the... Wait a minute, let me get...
We haven't gotten to Danny Kaye yet, but all right, we just did The Best Years of Our Lives. We did. We do a lot of noir. We do a lot of... and I'm always looking for fun guests, but a lot of incomparable panelists join me. And what's fun about the Incomparable Network is it's all these geeky, nerdy people who know about sci-fi and superheroes. And I know nothing about superheroes and could, just do not. And so I was amazed and astounded when they not only welcomed me, but when they started coming on my show and talking about it, classic movies in really intelligent ways. So it's been a lot of fun.
Lions, Towers, and Shields. And I love the album art because it looks like the old RKO.
Yeah. I know. Isn't it great?
It's so
black and white.
I'm a TCM fanboy. I watch it.
Me too.
Almost every day.
Yeah.
Shelley has let me indulge my Barbara O'Neill fixation. Which
God, the Barbara O'Neill Memorial Highway.
Who's Barbara O'Neill?
Was the best.
So Barbara O'Neill played Scarlett O'Hara's mother in Gone with the Wind, but she also made a completely bonkers. Well, she's made two completely bonkers movies.
Yes.
One of which
Only
we
one
covered.
of which we're going to watch.
Yes.
We're not doing the other one.
We're not going to do the toy wife. Because
we're not doing the toy wife.
Oh,
Go ahead,
that
Lisa.
one's
Explain.
Wait a minute. So do you watch the movie while you're doing the podcast?
No,
Is it
it's
that
not
kind
a
of-
live
ahead of time.
commentary.
Oh,
We
okay.
have done a live commentary once, but no, we just have everybody watch and then we talk about it for about an hour.
Barbara
go
O'Neill-
ahead and talk about Barbara O'Neill.
Is she what was it? The all that heaven will allow.
All this in Heaven too.
All This in Heaven too, where Betty Davis plays a button-down spinster, wildly casting against type, who was hired as the nanny for Charles Boyer and Barbara O'Neill. Barbara O'Neill is just unhinged. She spends the entire movie just turned up to 11 with eyes wide, nostrils flaring, skirts flying everywhere. She flounces in a high dudgeon, and she gives these great monologues about how everything that is mine, rightfully so, has been stolen from me, and frames people for murder, and there's poison involved. And the first time we watched this movie, we were like, oh, she just keeps going. Like Betty Davis is just kind of clinging to a corner of the screen, wondering what happened.
Wow.
And so Shelley was kind enough. Every time I suggest something for Lions, Towers, Shields, I'm like, oh, you have to watch this because it's just bonkers. And Shelley's like, fine.
Well, no, the other side of that coin is a lot of times I will suggest a movie that I love and adore or that I think is crazy, and then I will convince all these nice people who haven't seen it to come and watch it with me. And there's always the Shelley, what have you gotten me into phase of the episode. And I enjoy that so much.
So of the four, Angel Face, All This in Heaven 2, Gone with the Wind, or I Am the Law, which movie clip should I play?
All This in Heaven 2.
All This in Heaven 2.
Yeah,
Oh,
Charles Boyer, man.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early in her long
Probably no
narrative
copyright
flashback.
left.
Oh, copyright, schmoppyright.
It's old enough there's no copyright.
It's just too bad that-
1940. Is that, are we there
Yeah, I
yet?
don't know.
Gonna have to
Are we
send you.
there?
a
We're
message
not
on
out of
Steve
copyright,
Jobs'
no.
voice, though.
And Warner Brothers still is,
They insist.
Yeah, they figured it out.
All right. Never mind.
I
No, I
do
wanna hear it.
appreciate
I
that we've talked
You
about
wanna
All This
hear
in
it.
Heaven
You
2
wanna
and
get me
Ken
in trouble
Nordine on
now.
the Tech Podcast.
That's right. This is my sneaky way to take over your show,
All
Leo.
This in Heaven 2. All right, let me... it's not playing. Maybe it's trying to protect me from my worst inclination. Maybe it's because I'm using Firefox. Oh no, here we go. There's the beautiful Charles Boyer. It's just sitting there. There we go, spinning.
There's go.
Oh, there's Betty Davis.
Yes. Madame la Duchesse.
What year was this?
1940.
1940.
Really?
Oh, great
What time is it? You
era.
asked me for 11, madame. But if I am inconveniencing you...
This is so against type for Betty Davis.
Right?
You're right.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to do it.
She's a
And then
mouse.
when I discovered when I discovered Lisa's enjoyment of Barbara O'Neill, I was like, all right, we have to do that.
Does Betty Davis end up being a poisoner?
No.
Oh, she should.
No, she ends up being the poor put upon little
Sad.
Right.
little.
She's very mousy throughout.
Oh
Aw.
yeah. No, it's the movie. The framing device is ridiculous in this movie, which is another reason I love it so. But Barbara O'Neill, like what you heard through the door, like that is pretty much the note that she hits
Barbara O'Neill.
repeatedly through the movie.
And do you tell people where they can stream these shows so you don't get your
Turner
appetite?
Classic
Yes.
Movies. We were playing
They're
the
all on
clip.
Well,
TCM?
sometimes yes and
TCM.
sometimes no. I always give a streaming link as well as a media link every once in a while because I actually have a rather large Plex library. Every once in a while, I will put something up that isn't streamable, and so I have to help my panelists out a little bit with finding where they can stream it. But I always have a justwatch.com link to where you can stream it or where you can get the physical media.
I hate it when I get all excited about something and I can't stream it.
Oh yeah.
You know
Same
what?
here, which is why I collected physical media over the years and
you're
still
glad you
do,
have that
because
Plex server.
especially for classic movies, it's it's not predictable. It's very inconsistent. You'll say, oh, well, certain studio made it. Well, that doesn't mean that the legal rights were cleared, nor does it mean that the studio that made it continues to own it. It's all very complicated, especially for Paramount movies, although it's much better than it used to be. And I don't even pretend to understand all of it. I just have to look them up on an individual basis and go, oh, that one isn't streaming. Maybe we won't do it. Or it is streaming. Let's do it now.
I subscribe to the Criterion channel, which has a lot of great old movies.
It does.
And obscure movies and things on
Well, and they do great Blu-ray releases too.
yeah.
There's the Criterion
I used
releases
to buy
that have,
I used to buy their laser discs, and that's why I got the channel. And so you can actually see their effort in the stream as well. So that's kind of nice. Yeah. Let's take a little break. I don't know how we got on that. We're testing Content ID today on Twit, and we'll see what happens. See if Warner Brothers is worried about 1940s movies. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter. We use ZipRecruiter. We've hired so many people. Frankly, there's only two ways you can get hired at Twit. Either we know somebody who knows you. That's, I think, how we hired Benito, right? Or do we use ZipRecruiter for you, Benito? I can't remember. You know Jason. That's right. John moved next door about 15 years. Your 15th anniversary. Happy anniversary, John. 15 years ago, he just moved next door. He said, they're going to give me a job if I just moved next door. And it did. It worked. On the other hand, we just lost our dear beloved continuity person. Took another job. Sometimes that happens. But that's a big loss because that person does a lot of work with copy and with working with the editors to make sure the ads get done right, working with the clients to make sure they're getting their needs met. And we were down a person. We go to ZipRecruiter. Look who we've got. Viva, who's wonderful. ZipRecruiter, Lisa goes there every single time because it's just the easiest way to hire. It's also really effective. We have a lot. You wouldn't know it to watch this show, but we've got engineers, we've got editors, we've got producers, we've got a continuity department, we've got salespeople. And almost in every case, ZipRecruiter has brought us those talented people. It's critical for us as business owners to get the right people in the right job, right? So whether you're hiring for a podcast or your own growing business, ZipRecruiter is the place to go for a couple of reasons. You post on ZipRecruiter, it goes to 100 plus job sites plus social networks. So you're posting to everywhere, right? More people will see it. And the more people who see it, the more likely that right person, that needle in a haystack, will see it. But how do you find that needle in a haystack? That's where ZipRecruiter really, their technology really shines. All of the interest comes into your ZipRecruiter interface. So they reformat the resumes so you can scan through them easily. They allow you to add screening questions so that you can eliminate people who just, don't fit your needs. They also take all the phone calls you would get, all the inbox email you would get, put that into the interface so you don't get bombarded. You just go when you have some time and look at the ZipRecruiter interface. But then ZipRecruiter does something that's so cool. Because they already have 1 million resumes on file. People come to ZipRecruiter looking for work. They go through those resumes and match them to your job. So they find the right candidates, people with the qualifications you need, and then send you their names. and you can invite them to apply, whichever ones that you like. Now, the reason that's so successful is when you get imagine you're applying for a job and a company comes to you and says, we'd like to hire you. You're much more likely to follow through on the process. It's a great way to start a relationship. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter will get a quality candidate within the first day. I would say for us, it's within hours, every single time. And when you're down a person, every hour counts. You want to get that job filled. Look, if you love our shows, you love the people who make our shows, you're going to want to try ZipRecruiter for free today. You need to remember our special URL, though, ziprecruiter.com/twit. That's ziprecruiter.com/TWIT. You know, my wife Lisa says it every time, ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. It's where we get our best employees. We're very happy to have you all. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. All right, moving right along. Do not make chicken with NyQuil.
There goes dinner.
Very important.
It's such an expensive ingredient. Why would you waste it braising a chicken breast in it?
It turns out nobody was till the FDA put out a press release.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, those poor well-intentioned people.
NyQuil chicken, the notion of cooking chicken in NyQuil, which needless to say is a very bad idea, right?
Yes.
Right? We all agree. First of all, it's going to turn out bright green. Second, it's poison. Okay? Maybe if you're
But other than that,
Barbara Stanwyck or Betty Davis.
if you're Barbara O'Neill at the end of all that have a little left.
Yeah, but
Charles Boyer is dying of NyQuil poisoning.
NyQuil poisoning.
My
We knew
darling,
it.
what was in this chicken?
Some reason. Why is it bright green? Some reason. So it was put as a joke on 4chan. It's 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
5 years ago.
Wow.
And then apparently some people made TikToks about it. But for some reason last week, we mentioned this on Twig, the FDA released a press release saying it was titled "A Recipe for Danger." Social media.
I would watch that movie.
A recipe for danger. You know what? That would be a good movie.
You know, you say that and teenagers are like, yes.
Yeah, what?
Is it?
Well, that's the problem.
Yes.
Let's find out.
That's the problem.
Oh, my gosh.
The FDA referred to it as a recent trend. They cite no recent examples, according to Engadget. So this press release went out on September 15th. On September 14th, the day before the notice, there were 5 searches for NyQuil chicken in the app. The day after the release, there were 7,000. Literally an increase of 1,400 times. We know this as the Streisand effect.
This is hilarious until you realize that what's going to happen is you are going to have a genuine public health hazard, and the FDA may want to say something, and everyone will be like, is this NyQuil chicken all over again? Like,
Dear FDA, please get a subscription to Know Your Meme.
There you go.
Well, yeah. I mean,
there you go.
Well, this is a
Because I
persistent
can't
problem.
make fun of them out of context, but there are ways you could suss it out and figure out whether, in fact, this is a real thing or not. And Know Your Meme is certainly one of those places that
They're not wrong. It's a bad idea.
Does this point to like a wider disconnect between like the information ecosystem on different social media apps compared to how folks in the government are able to keep on top of that information and put it into context?
Yes, that plus
we're all extremely online. So we're all like, oh my God, the minute you see something on TikTok, like find a legitimate source. But what if you've got somebody who has only heard about the tickety talk from like a friend of a friend, and they are genuinely concerned about, someone comes and goes, did you hear teenagers on the tickety talk are cooking things in cough syrup?
Because remember Tide Pods, and that happened, and there was criticism for why didn't anybody do anything about this?
Yeah.
And so somebody at the FDA thought we need to get on top of this.
Yeah.
And somebody else at the FDA thought, oh my God, look at all the clicks my press releases get.
Yeah.
And then you add in misinformation and distrust of government. And I'm sure somebody is going to tell us that NyQuil chicken will cure COVID, and they don't want us to know about
God, yeah. Inject NyQuil.
Bill Gates.
That's
Larry,
the key.
you're going to end up being like Syed. Your whole face there just got turned into a screen grab for some Facebook group that says journalist says that NyQuil chicken cures COVID.
Oh, I'm famous. I'll be famous.
Yeah, you can't fault the NDA's intent.
The algorithm has spoken.
It is a recipe for danger.
Oh, absolutely.
But there is also a risk that by publicizing it. Now, the good news is no one has died of NyQuil chicken as we go to press. Apparently, the FDA.
Does it help you sleep better, though?
Yeah.
Larry? Okay. Well, you're curious.
Larry, no.
No, okay.
The FDA has, if you didn't want that, you could use Dayquil, though, I think. Right?
Lord.
No, the FDA has only posted once before about a viral challenge, and that was the deadly Benadryl challenge from 2020.
I don't know what that is, and I'm not sure I want us to be the vector by which they popularize it.
Well, I know
Right,
that
and
I know that there's
somebody who tends to cook things. I'm going.
Do not cook with
more and more-
Benadryl, no.
Yeah, there are more and more over-the-counter drugs when you go to the drugstore that are actually behind a locked case.
Right.
Because people are buying these things for all sorts of, inappropriate reasons. So I do not recommend that you cook with NyQuil. I just want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, do not.
We can cut that part out, so we don't have to worry about it.
Every time I have to sign the form, in California, you have to sign a form if you're buying a bottle of like the good Sudafed, stuff that actually works.
Because people make meth out of it.
Yeah, and every time I do it, I always have to
that from Breaking Bad.
I have to bite the urge to talk about how I'm making small batch artisanal meth.
Right, see, I have jokes queued up about cooking properties of NyQuil, and I'm not going to say them because they're funny, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no, like the devil on my shoulders. Go ahead, make the joke. It's the Bay Area, but
artisanal,
small batch artisanal.
Methadone.
Well, also you're not on a podcast at that point, so it's fine. But
So you all watch a lot of TV. Do you think Breaking Bad actually gave you a recipe for making really high quality meth, or was that just made up?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm just asking.
I wasn't watching it for that purpose.
I didn't actually watch Breaking Bad, so I
know.
Shelley, one of the great shows of all time.
There's only so many anti-hero shows that you can watch.
Right? I mean, I watched Mad Men. Come on, I did that.
I love Mad Men.
My one.
I love
Actually,
Mad Men.
this is a recommendation. We watched Fletch last night, the new Fletch movie with
Is it
John.
good?
It is such a fun way to spend your time.
So he's kind of shaking the Chevy Chase stigma against Fletch.
Yeah, he's made it his own.
He's made it his own.
My husband loves the books, loves the books, and gave it his stamp of approval. And Hamm's casting is really perfect, and they had a really solid supporting cast.
John Hamm, who was in Mad Men, is now playing Fletch.
John Slattery's
in it too,
as his pissy editor, and it's just a delight.
Yeah. I love that Hamm and Slattery are in stuff together. It's so adorable.
Yeah.
They always are.
Sounds like my favorite breakfast, Hamm and Slattery.
Ham and Slattery. Sounds very English, like you might have it if you went to London.
Do you have tomatoes and beans with that Hamm and Slattery? Getty Images has banned the use of AI-generated content over fears of legal challenge. Now, this has really been, I think, a fascinating, I called it a Cambrian explosion of AI with of course, it started with DALL-E 2, and then Stable Diffusion broke it open because you could download it, run it on your own computer. There are others. They make amazing images, but Getty, quite reasonably, is a little upset because all of these AI generators train on publicly available image sets. And apparently,
who owns those images?
It's not unusual, according to Emmy, that you will find, or Getty rather, that you will find the Getty Images watermark in images created by these AI art generators because so many of them have been trained on Getty Images watermark.
Donald Trump looks much better in that picture than he does in any other photograph I've ever seen of him.
You know, when you shared that story with us, I thought about the end of William Gibson's novel, Count Zero, where a curator is tasked by a billionaire to find the elusive artist who has been doing remixed collages and mixed media, and she discovers, well, the novel's like 40 years old, we can play. She discovers it's an AI that's creating the art. And I find it really interesting that we're now getting to the point where we're basically taking the suite of technologies that we call AI and pointing it at a data set known as images and saying, here, mix and match and find a way to recombine them in exciting new ways, and we'll find a way to use that, what you come up with.
Who's the artist? Is it is his name Rukowski, who does Greg Rukowski does these beautiful, you see him on the covers of science fiction works and so forth.
Yeah, that does look real science fiction-y.
He is upset because he is often used, you know how you these work is you give them a text phrase to describe it, and then they draw it. His name appears very commonly in a lot of these illustrations because they're looking to get it in that style. He's Polish. He's created fantasy scenes for Dungeons and Dragons and magic.
He's got a really distinctive style.
Very beautiful, I think, light and so forth. Yeah. He's kind of like Kincaid, the master of light, who is another name who appears a lot apparently in the descriptions. Stable Diffusion, which is the one that's open source and you can install yourself, is trained on 5 billion image text pairings. Although Andy Baio, we talked about this when he did it a few weeks ago, analyzed 12 million of the 5 billion and found many come from sites like Pinterest and Fine Art America. And there is some suspicion that Rakowski's work was actually scraped from his portfolio on ArtStation. And so he's a little upset. He says AI should exclude living artists from its database and instead focus on works under the public domain. There's a huge financial issue in evolving AI from being nonprofit research to a commercial project without asking artists for permission.
I think a lot about this because my former job at Texas Standard was to run the website. And so a lot of times I was looking for images, and we had paid sources of images, but we would a lot of times go to Wikipedia or to Flickr with CC rights stuff. So all sorts of different ways to get images, and we had to be very careful. And in fact, we've gotten a few takedowns because something was labeled incorrectly. And so when I saw that, and we don't have a Getty subscription because it's kind of pricey. Yeah. A lot of journalistic entities do. Your AP and NPR and various, most newspapers typically have Getty. And so I feel like it's kind of a protection for the lowly website person who just really needs a picture of the president or of the border fence or of the latest terrible incident that happened that we need a photograph of and doesn't necessarily know the provenance of it. It's hard enough when theoretically there are credit lines and you know the source of a piece of art or piece of imagery, whether it's a photograph or whether it's an piece of art. But then you go and you add the AI element, and there are, as I know because I've read an awful lot of Flickr Creative Commons listings, a lot of images, they say you have permission to remix it with credit, or you don't have permission to remix it at all, or you can remix it up to this point. And all of that assumes art or photographs that were created by actual humans, but you get AI in the mix, and it's really hard for somebody to know, if they're being honest. You're trying to only use things that you have permission to use and to give full credit where it's due, but you don't necessarily have any sort of realistic expectation that you are being accurate when you give that credit.
I kind of think of it more as a kind of a fair use. Dwindle in our chat room says, as an artist, I've studied the work of other artists. That's how I learned how to do things. Why shouldn't AI be willing to do that? It's not an exact duplicate of the work of art. Yeah. It's influenced by or it's styled like. Yeah. I think that should be fine.
So Harvard University has something called the Studio Habits of Mind, where they've broken down how artists work. And there are 8 studio habits of mind you have, and one of them is to actually immerse yourself into an art world so that you become familiar with it and then observe. Also, I desperately need to address your chat because there's somebody named Adasync there. Adasync, we have 2 different William Gibson novels with 2 different cases of hunting down an artist. In Count Zero, it's Marley Kristova, the curator, who goes to look for the AI Wintermute who's making the little boxes and pastiches. In Pattern Recognition, it's Case Pollard, who finds the video artist Nora, who's doing video remixes. 2 completely different. They're very similar very similar in that you're hunting down somebody, but in this case I was specifically referencing the Wintermute built collages in Count Zero for a reason.
There you go. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just had to get that out of my
Are we excited about The Peripheral being made into a TV show?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I plan on assessing it on its own merits, but I'm also really looking forward to seeing how Gibson gets adapted as a serial format.
I love William Gibson. Of course, he wrote Neuromancer, which was transformational.
Oh my gosh.
Cyberpunk.
I would argue the Blue Ant trilogy is probably the most accurate future casting of the 21st century that we've seen so far. The Blue Ant, it's Pattern Recognition, Spook Country, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
I'm reading The Peripheral now. I didn't read it before because I want to read it before the TV show comes out. But he has this concept of polts, which are poltergeists, basically, which are spirits from another previous world, I guess, and being used in our world. It's just fascinating. He's a very... Anyway, back to AI art.
Sorry.
You were talking about Harvard.
Yeah, Harvard has something called the studio habits of mind. There are 8 separate habits that they argue contribute to an active daily practice of craft and creation. And among those 8 habits of mind, you do have immerse yourself in the art community so you can understand it better. Yeah. So that's a question. How does AI do that?
As Isaac Newton said, if I've seen farther than others, it's because I stood on the shoulder of giants. We all learn from our predecessors, and I learned from Ken Nordine. I wish I were as good as Ken Nordine, but if you said, oh, you can't sound anything like Ken Nordine, well, come on. That's how art works. This is.
But now I've seen, like, we saw So I Married an Axe Murderer as our Friday night family movie, and it's such a San Francisco little movie. But Ken Nordine, I was like, oh my God, that's what Mike Myers. No, but that's what Mike Myers does as a jazz poet. Oh, because Mike Myers is this is how you can tell it's fiction. Is Mike Myers is gainfully employed as a jazz poet, and
does he wear a black beret and
he does. But there's the snapping, and it really, I like when you introduced me to Nordine, I was like, oh my God, I've heard this before. And I just realized it was a pastiche tribute. Oh my gosh.
I love when those things click in your head. It's so much fun.
It's so exciting.
But to address what you were talking about, Shelley, I think you should be able to use AI generators as a small blog for illustrations. Here's what Ben Thompson on his blog Stratechery, which
such a good blog,
normally illustrates with napkin drawings. He went to Midjourney, so he's writing about his first job as a paperboy. He went to Midjourney and created an image. I think these are beautiful. Well, I don't think there's anything...
Is it so much similar to a DJ, mixing, grabbing sounds to mix their music? I mean, we sort of have a long tradition of integrating other people's work into our work, some of which is legitimate, some of which isn't.
And I guess the point I was trying to make was not so much that it shouldn't exist, but that there should be full disclosure about the provenance of something, so that whether your goal is to protect the interests of a living artist, or whether you're just trying to give credit where credit is due, or whether you find something beautiful and want to know whether you're allowed to use it or not, you know what the source is. And I think what specifically referencing what Getty's doing is that, I mean, they're banning it because frankly, they probably don't know enough about it. And they're probably saying, well, we need to make it go away until either we figure it out or until the culture at large figures it out, and then we can be sort of a trailing edge because
that makes
they're
sense.
Getty, and they make an awful lot of money doing this stuff.
They don't want Greg Rukowski coming after them, and I don't blame them.
And I'm thinking about it as a user, and I, as a potential Getty customer, am thinking, I appreciate that. It doesn't mean that I'm being a Luddite in terms of whether AI art is a good or a bad thing. It just means let's understand the implications of it before we throw it out there into a context where we don't have full rights, you know?
I screw rights. Of course, I just played like 4 movie cuts but honestly, in fact, I even said we need to install Stable Diffusion on a computer here so we could start using it for thumbnails for our shows or album art stuff. I mean, look, we hired and used a very good design company to redo our album art a few weeks ago. We paid a lot of money for it, and I'm glad to do it, and I wouldn't want to replace the human artist. That's, to me, the bigger question is, like, are these going to get so good that you don't need humans to do it? I don't think that's a problem, but I'm not worried about appropriation. I think this is art. This is something Larry Lessig, when he started Creative Commons, and Cory Doctorow talked a lot about. No artist creates in a vacuum. No. And that's why stuff has to go out of copyright. That's why you need a public domain. Because, Disney, did the Grimm's fairy tales, right? And of course, as soon as Disney made those movies, he made sure that no one else would do it. He pulled the ladder right up out behind him. But that's not how it works. It should work. We continue to, that's the grist for the mill. So I don't think I have a problem at all with these. Even just because they're AIs, I mean, I don't think that's problematic. Let's let them go. And I think it's really interesting how it's exploded as soon as people could install it on their own computer, right? When there was a limited access to DALL-E, and you have to get in. I applied for an invitation. I've never gotten an invitation. Years, it feels like years, months later. But I can run Midjourney. I can run Stable Diffusion on my own computer. Now, OpenAI has open sourced a speech recognition system, and I think we're going to maybe see the same explosion the Cambrian explosion we've seen of art. With this, it's called Whisper. It has a variety of different training models. I guess I have to go to the site to see this. You can download it. It's written in Python, and it's a command line. But apparently, from people who have been using it, it's better than anything Google or Apple or anybody else is doing. Wow. Now, there are people, transcriptionists, who say, well, now I'm out of a job. There's Otter AI and other companies that are selling this. That's life, right?
The thing I'm super curious about is how well will they handle accents?
Apparently very well.
How well do they handle speech impediments?
That I don't know, but apparently it's surprisingly, from the reviews I've read, surprisingly good at accented speech. You have multilingual models, so that means you could translate from one language into another and transcribe it. I don't know. I think this is very interesting. 680,000 hours of audio collected from the internet. Yep. They can have all my shows.
And there are questions about how much of what they've collected is fully representative, whether it's accents or whether it's speakers in different countries with different not dialects so much as just different patterns of speech.
Yeah, it might be Castilian Spanish versus Mexican Spanish.
Right. And so there are potential issues. I think the open source is the secret sauce of it because
exactly
there are lots of people who are very critical of Google's captions, for example. They are affectionately referred to in the hearing impaired community as craptions. And then people are skeptical about Apple's got this live captions thing coming out. I don't think we really know yet how good it is. But for the people who use it as an accessibility tool, the ability to have text converted to speech it's amazeballs, and it's also really problematic because it doesn't work nearly as well as it should. And the idea of this being open source is that somebody who really wants to train it and make it highly tuned to the needs of somebody who is relying on this to understand material in a variety of contexts. Because what I like about Apple's doing, and I don't know what Apple's doing, and I don't know how well they're going to do it, is they basically said anything that comes out of your computer, we can turn into speech, or into text rather. And that's ambitious. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good, but the idea of this being open source is that it can be applied all over the place, and it can continue to learn. So
how does that impact
that's the
rights?
advantage.
Yeah. How did that impact rights? Like I've thought about, for example, I have a lot of Audible books, and once in a while I kind of want to read the book. Now, the easy solution is to go out and buy the book right on Kindle. But I always wondered, could I record the Audible? Could I do a transcription of the Audible book? Would that be legal if I did it for my own purposes? It'd be cumbersome. But what are the rights issues when you transfer from one medium to another?
Well, I don't know about that, but what is interesting is that happens constantly because screen reader technology or apps that turn the reverse, right? You turn text into speech are super common. And so people are taking material that exists in book form and they're, listening to it as transcription.
But Shelley, as you know, there are special copyright provisions for materials for blind.
But that stuff is not always handled under those provisions. They exist that way, but it happens outside of it. And the quality varies a lot. And people who rely on that technology sort of have to be used to things like synthetic voices, which are getting better. I know we're sort of talking about the reverse of what Whisper is doing.
But Shelley, you bring up a really interesting point, which is right now what I'm reading in the TechCrunch thing is about transcription and or captions. To give an example of, there was a little bit of a kerfluffle at my daughter's school because when the principal sends out messages, it's a robo voice and not her real voice. And people were complaining about this until she said in a PTA meeting, look, we serve families who speak 12 different languages in this school. So she said, so when I send out the robo thing, what they found is it's easier to translate and have those played in native languages than it would be if she spoke with her natural rhythms, intonations, and dialects.
Wow.
So there's something going on with the technology that makes robots easier to read and scan. And it seems like that would be kind of a natural complement to this story, because if you've got an open source thing that can recognize speech and transcribe it, it would not be that hard to slap on another module that then translates it back into audio
that makes
for
sense.
somebody.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
Google
sense,
actually
actually.
does already.
Yeah.
Google does that they have an Android app that does that, right? Where you can speak in one language and it will speak back in another language.
Right.
Isn't this, though, a great test of open source versus commercial?
Yes.
I personally think by open sourcing it, OpenAI is going to improve at a much faster rate. Just because same with Stable Diffusion, because people are training it on new data, they're adding new data, they're adding new languages. I love that, and frankly, I've been, and I'm curious actually what the blind community thinks, but I've been very disappointed with the progress Google, Apple, Microsoft have made with their transcription stuff. It could be so much better. I mean, it's good.
It should have been better once we all started working at home in 2020.
Should have been better. Shelley,
Well,
is
and
that your
before
sense?
that, because there's no reason it couldn't have been better, and not I think what's improved is artificial intelligence and machine learning, the actual ability to transcribe given pristine text to turn it into speech, or given speech that is easily understandable and is well recorded and turned into text. A lot of those nuts and bolts have existed, and what's changed is we need to use AI because we have accents and because we have so many different languages and because we want to do it faster and all that stuff. And it feels like it predates the pandemic. The pandemic is sort of a good opportunity to say there's more and more use for it, because now it's really required that if you have Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something like that, early on in the pandemic, Zoom got better captioning ability than it had before. And it was because people with disabilities were like, hey, I'm in Zoom meetings and I can't hear what's being said. I need captioning. And so Zoom had to hurry up and improve their captioning ability.
So this would be a hard thing to caption. Passengers on a recent American Airlines flight were puzzled by what seemed to be a hack of their PA system. Let me see if I can play this for you. I don't know if this video has been removed. No, here it is. This is a guy on the weirdest flight ever. His name is Emerson Collins. These sounds started on the intercom before takeoff, continued throughout the flight. The flight deck said, as far as we could tell, it's no danger to us, so we're just going to keep on going. Listen, and you tell me what you think these sounds are. Coming through the PA system.
Upsetting.
Somebody's either having a really good or a really bad day.
It's very upsetting.
They couldn't figure. Now listen, because the captain's going to come on here. Wait a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, we realize there is an extremely irritating sound coming over the public announcements. The flight deck is trying to troubleshoot, trying to turn it off. So please be patient with us. We know this is a very odd anomaly, and none of us are enjoying it. So we do appreciate your attention just for a few more moments. We figure out
It lasted the whole flight.
Wow, that's like a form of psychological
and then
warfare.
American Airlines said,
who is having a puke yank?
no, they did not say that.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what that is. Don't tell me.
It sounds terrible, whatever it is.
It's terrible. American Airlines in a press release or whatever said, well, let me read this to you because I want to give them the PA system is wired. It's not Wi-Fi. It's not Bluetooth. American Airlines inspected the Boeing 737-800 as well as the PA system when the plane landed. Maintenance, quote, determined the sounds were caused by an issue with the PA amplifier. There was no access to the system.
My favorite detail was that it started right after one of those credit card ads.
It did. It happened at the very end of the credit card offer announcement before the attendant could hang up the phone. I hate that. They do that on the planes. They try to, in fact, I fell for it once. And another story. She didn't know what to do since it happened basically while she was on. 3 supervisors or American Airlines management just went on board before first class. So they couldn't figure it out. And they still, as far as I know, haven't figured it out. In fact, some have tweeted something similar happened on an Airbus. So John, do you know of any way that an analog amplifier could be modified to make it sound like a human going, I don't think so. Let me play it one more time because I want you to listen and be the judge.
I love this guy's facial expressions.
No idea. I don't know. Maybe this will be a mystery.
Messed up.
That's messed up.
But without him, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun.
Yeah.
You got to watch it. You can't do it.
One more commercial before I have a few extra stories, but we're about ready to wrap it up if you're wondering. I know, we got the House of the Dragon to watch. We got places to be, things to do. Our show today brought to you, though, and I got to give them a lot of credit, by Audible. Audiobooks from Audible saved my life. When we came back from the concert, John, on Friday night, and I was driving back, Lisa and I were reminiscing about commutes. I used to commute for 13 years from San Francisco to Petaluma. An hour if there's no traffic. If there's traffic, 2 hours each way. That's from 2 to 4 hours a day sitting in a car. I got so sick of listening to the radio. Then Audible came along, and I joined Audible 22 years ago, and it saved my life. Audiobooks from Audible are the best way you can spend time in the car, washing dishes, walking the dog. Anytime you can't hold a book, you can listen to audiobooks on Audible in every genre, from bestsellers to new releases to celebrity memoirs to mysteries and thrillers to motivation, wellness, business, and more. There's Audible originals. In fact, I'm thrilled because Audible has, in their Frontiers series, resurrected some of the great science fiction novels that were never audio, and have put them on audio and done such a good job recording them. They have the Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, far better than the TV show, to listen to the radio play that Neil put together. Incredible, parts 1 and 2. Steve Martin, his Born Standing Up you have to listen to the audiobook version. It's so good. Renowned experts, exciting new voices in audio, even podcasts, commercial free. As an Audible member, you get to choose a title a month to keep from their entire catalog, including the latest bestsellers and new releases. But then you also get access to Audible originals, podcasts too. You can listen to all you want. More get added every month. It's a great selection. In fact, I'm really thrilled because Steve Gibson's been telling me about this great science fiction series that he's loving called The Silver Ships by S.J. Yucha. There are, I think, let me just see. I think there's like 20 of them, right? It's a very, very, very long series. And Steve likes these. Yeah, there's like 20 of them. So I bought the first one, loving it. Then I discovered that many of the rest of them are already in my Audible library as part of the Audible originals. That's so exciting. That's just one of the great things about Audible. I've never run out of great things to listen to. As an Audible member for 22 years, they stay in your library. You can listen to them anytime. And I just, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I love the Sound Plus Music stuff they do. I have you listen to an artist talking about her music, and then they play the music. It's just fantastic. In fact, I'm going to add a few William Gibson novels to my Audible list. Larry, you said you were listening to something.
I'm listening to Jonathan Lemire at The Big Lie.
Oh,
I listen to a lot of fiction. I mostly like fiction on Audible, but I listen to everything.
You know what I do? I alternate.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because if I listen to a lot of fiction, then I want to hear some nonfiction and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Lately, I've been on a bit of a science fiction binge. But
what's great is I talked earlier about my Fitbit diet, and it means I do a lot of walking to burn up calories, and that's when I listen.
Walking is so good for you. Yeah. And my favorite day of the month is the 22nd because that's when I get my Audible credit. In fact, I think for me, the retention's even better. There's some audiobooks on Audible that I think are The Life of Pi I listened to instead of reading, and I was sobbing at the end. It came alive for me. I really identified with it. You can listen to the Audible app anywhere, anytime. I even have Audible now on my new watch, and I downloaded the Silver Ships to my watch, so I put in my AirPods, and I can go for a walk. Don't even have to have my phone and listen to my audiobooks while traveling, working out, walking, doing chores. Let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, be inspired, or be entertained. If you've not yet joined Audible, and God knows we've been talking about it for 22 years, it feels like, you can do it for 30 days free when you go to audible.com/twit, audible.com/twit, or text twit to 500-500. If you've seen my interviews with Andy Weir, who wrote the amazing The Martian, and his latest project, Hail Mary, so good. But let me tell you, the audiobooks are even better because the guy he gets to read his audiobooks has that, he's got the snarky style and sound. It's so, so good. I love it. Text TWIT to 500-500 to try Audible for free for 30 days, or go to audible.com/twit. Okay. I could go on and on on Audible for hours. Shelley, you must listen to audiobooks, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I listen to quite a bit of audiobooks.
I love it. As I get older, my eyes get tireder. It's the only, and I try to read a book in bed at night. I get one page and then it hits me in the nose. So it's just really better. I think it's a better way to enjoy reading.
Better than NyQuil chicken.
Yeah, yes, it is definitely better than NyQuil chicken.
That's Audible's new slogan.
Better than NyQuil chicken.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. I want
to cut that one.
James Earl Jones, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, James Earl Jones.
Vader. What kind of nerd are you?
Okay, forget it. Let me
Alec Guinness, somewhere from the grave.
Alec Guinness.
What am I, chop liver?
Leo. Well, I actually want to ask you about it. Well, all right. First, I've got to show you the promo. I forgot. This is what you missed if you missed a minute of Twit this week. Watch.
Okay, it's called It's Bananas.
Yeah.
And it is the monkey tail game. You get 2 monkey tails, and then it comes with a belt, and the belt goes around.
You have to wear
waist.
it?
Yeah, you got to wear your monkey tail.
And now you have to walk around and bend down and loop. And
all right, I'm getting this.
It's a riot.
Previously on Twit.
Coming up next on Hands on Windows, we're going to finally take a look at Windows setup and what has changed in Windows 11 version 22H2. Some of it may surprise you.
This week in Enterprise Tech.
40% of surveyed data scientists, business analysts, and students have scaled back their use of open source components since vulnerabilities in open source components have forced them to reevaluate the code frequently used in analysis and the creation of machine learning models.
All about Android.
Here's my Z Fold 4.
Oh, looks so
As
stylish.
you can see, I have a cute Kate Spade case on it. It is a portable tablet device to the point that using it when it's closed might feel a little awkward because this is a slightly more narrow phone than what you're used to in the Android world. It's like this slightly thinner brick. You can look through it.
Twit.
Jeez. Or like a
It
Viewmaster.
doesn't close all the way. I can definitely see through it. Oh, that's weird. I didn't.
They all have folds? I'm so jealous. Make sure you
watch.
watch.
What is that monkey tail?
Is that as stupid as? I bought one immediately after he showed it. You know why? It's actually a good reason. When the family gets together for Christmas or Thanksgiving, we need something so that we don't talk about politics, right? Oh. So we always have a stupid game that gets everybody laughing. In this case, a monkey tail that you have to hook stuff with is nuts. So we always have this stupid game so that nobody will talk politics.
If you're looking for another stupid game,
yes,
Exploding Kittens game.
That's wonderful.
Poetry for Neanderthals.
Oh,
because the deal it's a game where you have to describe a word on you have to describe the word on the card using only 1-syllable words. So if it's marshmallow, you have to be sweet, soft, square.
That's great. I'm ordering it.
And the thing is, here's the thing: is if you do not. If you deviate from the 1 syllable, the opposing team gets to hit you with a giant inflatable bat called the No-No Club.
Okay.
So it's highly recommend
poetry for cavemen. Yeah.
Yes. Poetry for Neanderthals. Yes. So,
although
my nephews who are in high school, I'm going to enjoy hitting them on the head with
it is. We played with it. We played with a bunch of people who are smart enough to get into UC Berkeley, and they were like stumped.
Oh yeah,
they were,
single syllables.
Yes,
What's that?
Exactly. It was a delight.
I don't know any words at once. So
I went to UC Berkeley. I don't think I'm that smart.
My trainer went to Cal, and he can't count to 20. At least when I'm lifting weights, he can't. So every time he says, "How many is that?" I don't know. So we were talking about James Earl Jones, not Alec Guinness. Although I do love every Alec Guinness movie ever made. The man in the gray suit or white suit.
Even Murder by Death.
Murder by Death. That's a later one.
Yeah.
But James Earl Jones, I just learned from the chat rooms, first movie was, anybody?
The Great White Hope?
No.
Or no?
Older than that. He had a bit part in a very famous movie you might know as Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, that's right. I should know that.
Bomb fusing, master safety on, electronics,
no spoilers. That's this is
bomb fusing, master safety on.
Nice.
Isn't that amazing?
Young man.
His very
I knew that
first role.
somewhere in the back of my brain, and I forgot it. Oh
Lieutenant
well. There goes my
Luthor Zog.
score on trivia.
So he's also, as you point out, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, Darth Vader. I just do that to make you crazy. But of course, he's 91 now, which I didn't realize.
Really? Wow.
Yes, and his voice is not the one you're used to. So there is a company in Ukraine. This is from Vanity Fair. Their company's called Respeecher. By the way, they're doing some of this work from bomb shelters because they're in Kyiv and Lviv and so forth, that is working on voice synthesis for James Earl Jones for future, because Darth Vader's voice can't change, for future Star Wars TV and movies. The last time he had actual dialogue was in The Rise of Skywalker. And at that point, he told Lucas, he said, or Disney, I guess, he's looking at winding down. So they hired Respeecher, and James Earl Jones has given them full license to duplicate his voice.
Wow.
In fact, Jones' family told them how pleased they were with the result of the work, giving his voice back, to the galactic
I'm
tyrant.
really glad that they have a license to do that. They're just not bootlegging his voice.
And they're not saying, well, you
and that he
did this for
benefits
once,
from it.
we own you.
Yeah. So
and I don't know if his contract is better because he's James Earl Jones and has the ability to benefit from it and sign off on it than somebody else who was hired as a voice actor in something and then their character goes on to become important and they want to reuse it, which I'm sure has happened many times.
He was, for a long time, as I remember, pissed off about CNN.
This is CNN.
This is, the world's whatever.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was there doing an interview or something, and somebody kind of said, "Hey, could you say?"
Really?
Yeah, the world's most important news network or something. I can't remember what it is. They haven't used it lately.
So they basically did like in Bowfinger where you kind of accidentally captured the...
They got him to say it into a microphone and then used it.
Wow.
And he was a little miffed. They eventually made him whole. They settled.
Well, does the article go into detail about the tremendous amount of tech expertise that goes into generating his voice, both from a here's how we did it perspective and also a here's how we did it while our country is currently being shelled perspective?
Yeah, they do.
Because that's what I'm interested in.
They do.
These people maintain a phenomenal continuity of IT operations while they were being shelled.
Yeah. Bogdan
and I wonder,
Belyaev was working from home when the air raid sirens went off, begins the article. They hadn't been heard in the city of Lviv since World War II, but it was February 24th, and Russia had just invaded Ukraine. When we heard that missiles were attacking and that our internet connection was dropping for parts of the country, we got into shelter, says Bogdan. That meant him, his wife, their dog, and two cats huddling in the center of their building. It's a shelter in quotes because it was actually our bathroom. There's a rule of two walls. Get ready for this. You need to be behind two walls. The first wall takes the impact. The second one stops the small shrapnel. But for Belyaev, the work continued because he needed it to. People on the other side of the world were relying on them. The project was a culmination of a passion he'd had since childhood, Star Wars. He's a synthetic speech artist at the Ukrainian startup Respeecher. They use archival recordings and a proprietary AI algorithm to create new dialogue with the voices of performers from long ago.
Maybe they can get Putin to surrender. Give a speech.
Just hey, Vlad. They worked with Lucasfilm to generate the voice of a young Luke Skywalker for the Book of Boba Fett. They needed to make James Earl Jones sound like Darth Vader from 45 years ago for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And even though they were under invasion in shelters all over the country, they continued working because...
You realize this means that Twit could go on for the next 200 years.
I am so thrilled about that. They can. I have hundreds of thousands of hours of my voice. If they can't fake it by now, I love it. I love it. Mozilla has said that despite the fact that Google's Chrome and all the Chromium derivatives are going to a new Manifest V3, which will effectively make it impossible for ad blockers to work. I wonder why Google would do that. I don't know. Mozilla has said Firefox will continue to maintain compatibility with Manifest V2, which means, for instance, that uBlock Origin, which is the ad blocker I recommend and we all use around here, will continue to work, not with Chrome, not with Edge, not with any other Chromium-based browser, but will continue to work. It's the web request API they need so that they can see the content as it's coming through and block it appropriately. So there are Manifest V3 compatible ad blockers, but its operation is somewhat limited by the lack of that API.
What's the market share that...
Well, no one knows because he gives it away.
Well, no, I was going to say in terms of who's using what browser, do we have
yes, I'm sure there is. I think Mozilla is a laggard.
Yeah, because it's fantastic technology, but if it's fantastic technology that doesn't significantly impact a huge percentage of web users.
I'm, as you can see here, using Firefox, and I've used it for years. So that line at the very top of the graph, that green line, 70%. What do you think that is? That's Chrome. This is globally, according to Statista. Or I'm sorry, StatCounter.com. Chrome is 65% of the browser market. Number 2, Safari, because you got no choice.
It's on iPhones.
Yeah.
It's on phones and tablets,
Yeah, 18%. And then there's a big clump at the bottom starting with Firefox, 3% as of last month.
It's kind of hilarious. This is how Safari has managed to actually keep any position as, well, we dominate the mobiles.
Yeah, we just lock you in.
Exactly.
You can't use anything but Safari. Even if you're using Chrome on iOS, you're using WebKit. So I use Firefox for that reason also. I want to make sure that it is not a monoculture in the browser world. We need some competition.
Yeah, I do too, and I've been happy with it. It's you're
great.
making a point, but it's also a really good browser.
Yeah. I love everything it does.
Extensions that I want. I can sync my bookmarks. Those are,
Exactly, yeah.
Does this story basically mean the end of effective ad blocking technology for people on the world's #1 browser or on the #1 browser share?
Well, this is an interesting question because Safari's done something similar, right? And the ad blockers on Safari, in my opinion, are very weak, right? You can get them, but I think because they've done something similar, now Google's excuse is going to be, well, this is a security thing. We don't want third-party extensions to be able to watch your traffic. But if you want an ad blocker, that's kind of a necessity. So,
it's like Apple's excuse for controlling the App Store, not letting independent
security.
Yeah, it's all about security. Protect the children.
Yeah, we're doing it for you.
Protecting children. Yeah.
All right, one last, since we're talking movies, Star Trek the Motion Picture finally done. Now, you may think you saw Star Trek the Motion Picture 43 years ago, but it was Robert Wise, who directed it, always thought it was thin gruel. He eventually released a director's cut in the year 2000 on DVD, but even then, it wasn't what he intended. The reason is there were so many tie-ins. There were so many theaters that were expecting Star Trek the Motion Picture, which incidentally was scheduled to come out just right before this thing called Star Wars. And they literally could not let it slip. In fact, when they had the preview, Robert Wise delivered the last reel of the film literally wet with the chemicals from the developer. He says he flew to Washington, D.C. for the premiere, slept with the film under his bed that night, and brought it into the theater. And the problem was it was a rough cut. And there's actually this great article in Uprocks talking about what a rough cut is. It's the first pass at the editing, where you're just getting everything in order. And then you're going to tighten it up. You're going to shorten by a frame or two or many. You're going to have it work better. They never got to do that. So if you've been waiting for it, there's a fella who has been editing this ever since. He says 1,500 additional edits. And his name is David Fine. Robert Wise died about 15 years ago. Has been working on this ever since. They're releasing a 4K disc, which is important too because the original effects were not 4K.
Right.
So they remastered the effects, which are done by Douglas Trumbull. The guy who wrote this article said, Mike Ryan, who's a senior entertainment writer at Uprock, said, this is the most gorgeous, stunning creation, literally one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. So I can't wait. 15 or so, 100 edits or so. He says Star Trek The Motion Picture is finally a film that feels properly paced, looks stunning, and no longer keeps the viewers at arm's length. So maybe that's a vintage film 43 years ago.
I mean, the article sounded almost hyperbolic because my memory, and it's been a really long time since I've seen Star Trek The Motion Picture, and I felt like most people do, especially when you see The Wrath of Khan afterwards, and you're like, oh, that's how we do Star Trek.
Exactly.
Movie. And so reading this, I guess I'm having trouble thinking about editing and pacing and even improvements visually, making that so much better a movie. I would absolutely watch it, 100%. And as we joke over on The Incomparable, that's entirely too new a movie for my show. But I will watch it on somebody else's show.
Isn't it kind of mind-boggling that it's 43 years old? That to me is
everything mind boggles that it's 40 years old. Yeah. I've been watching a fair number of 70s and 80s movies recently just for giggles, and yeah, the age of them relative to my own life experience is just annoying.
But they also look pretty dated. I have to say there was a period the film went through where it really was just more dated than even older films for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, you have expectations. Like once you sort of get into, and black and white, I think changes it too. Like you're like, okay, I'm in a different world. I'm in a black and white movie. But if you see a dated looking color movie from the 70s, or especially if it's something like with sci-fi and special effects and stuff like that, I think that's probably more annoying than just sort of some sort of family drama from the mid 50s. It's black and white.
I still like early Technicolor. I mean, I don't know. I'm a sucker for that.
There is a look to it.
Super saturated.
Yeah, there is a look to it that I love. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm sure many of our listeners are. It's going to come out on DVD on UHD, but I will hope that the streamers will pick it up at some point because I haven't bought a DVD in a long time.
Yeah, me neither. My Blu-ray player broke and I haven't even replaced it.
We went to Lisa and I went to see, and I think I mentioned this before, Motley Crue and Def Leppard. And the Shriners were circulating, raising money, and they were selling Motley Crue CDs. And so Lisa, being a good citizen, bought one, and so did the people sitting around us. And then we all looked at them and said, what are we going to do with these? We don't have a CD player. Where are we going to put this?
Well, you know how the tipsters in the early aughts got into vinyl, like really into vinyl?
Do you think they'll get into CDs?
I would love it if the next generation of hipsters decided that CDs was like their thing to ironically embrace as authenticity.
Oh God! I certainly hope.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh! I did just see it now. Like I wrote like little soul patches and CDs.
that means guys my age will have to start revising 8-tracks.
Yes.
Oh God!
Or
cassettes.
Yes. Oh my God!
I never had an 8-track, but I had a lot of cassettes.
Lisa, you're going to be busy in just a few days. You've got Enterprise Connect is coming up September 28th. Why don't you give a plug for this? What is it?
Sure thing. Enterprise Connect is an in-person show every March where we spend 4 days diving into the complexities of the communication stack, again, from basic level networking all the way up through demands on call centers, contact centers, up to collaborative communication systems and unified communication systems. We've done a lot with Zoom, Slack, Microsoft Teams has been a big thing for us. One of the topics that we've seen a great amount of interest from our audience is on hybrid work, namely they're the folks who are responsible for making it work. If you're working at home and you need to troubleshoot Zoom, my readers are the ones who are going to be the folks that make sure that your meetings still run. If you're in a hybrid situation like we are here, where we've got two folks on the side.
Yes, we are, aren't we?
Exactly.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, and it's a whole new way of working and having conversations. We're pleased to be holding a big virtual event around this. We've got some really great sessions on how to on how to identify the issues in the hybrid workplace, what it means to set up a meeting room so it's accessible and giving everybody an equality of experience, what it means to be transforming a contact center when you no longer have a bunch of people in a bullpen, but they're all over the place, and more importantly, how new 911 regulations are going to work when your workforce is distributed, but you're still under obligation to make sure that if the worst happens, search and rescue can get to them in time.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. If you're working at home, you're still an employee.
Yeah.
And the company still has a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be interesting. Enterprise Connect.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to enterpriseconnect.com and register for free.
It's free.
It's
yes,
coming up
please come.
September 28th, 11:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you're the director of the program, so I bet it's going to be really good.
My boss, Eric Krapp, is the one who put this one together. I'm the program co-chair for the live event,
Co-chair.
too.
Okay.
But I have been helping to coordinate coverage of this before the show.
Smart.
Mm-hmm.
Very political. Got to give your boss credit.
Well,
for
he's a
credit's
great
due.
boss.
Absolutely. Lisa Schmeiser writes for nojitter.com, edits it, in charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're editor-in-chief.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see you. And your family's here, so...
I know. Hello, family.
Are you the Girl Scout? Where's my cookies? Oh, poor girl. Now I'm putting her on the spot.
You'll have them in the winter, sweetie.
Do you have some nuts for me anyway? No.
Not till October.
Oh, okay. Next month. Okay.
Next month, yeah.
Nice to see. They came to pick you up.
They
Your
did,
ride's
yes.
here,
Here
Lisa,
they
so
are,
we're going to let you go. Thank you, Larry Magid, connectsafely.org. You just put out, I shouldn't laugh, the new Connect Safely Guide to Teen Sextortion.
Oh, God, it's not funny, but it's serious. I mean, if you're if you have a teenage boy who is getting nude pictures from a teenage girl, well, it probably isn't a girl. It probably isn't a teenager.
No.
And don't reciprocate by sending a picture, because that person or that crime syndicate may very well get back to you with a financial demand.
That's a nightmare, because you would be liable. Holy cow.
Oh, no, serious stuff. On a brighter note, we have if you go to our Explore by Topic section, you'll find a lot of other new stuff, including a lot of stuff on the metaverse. We're not sure how the metaverse is going to turn out or what exactly it is, but we will try to make it as safe as possible. You can just be
sure it'll be bad for teens. That's all.
Well, it'll be more immersive, put it that way.
No, we could talk a whole nother hour.
I don't want, I'm so glad my kids are grown, 30 and 27, because I don't know what I would do if I had young kids these days. I don't know how you guys do it, but you're good parents. So
well, we lucked out with the one we have, so that helps a lot.
We'll check you.
Yeah.
Aw, she's adorable. Adorbs.
I'd like to think you'd be a regular reader of Connect Safely.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure Lisa does it all right. You've got quick guides there, educator guides, parent guides, also in Spanish. Lots of information. I think you do.
But Leo, for you, we do have a guide for online safety for seniors, so don't feel.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, can you tell me how to use my Apple Watch? Because I can't figure it out. Thank you, Larry. Always great to see you.
My pleasure.
I like the new look. You do look about 20 years younger. You look fantastic.
Yeah,
you got your hair shortened a little bit. No more mustache.
Well,
lost 20 pounds.
Barbershops now.
Yeah.
You
look
not
great.
doing my own haircuts.
Yeah. It's great to see you. And Shelley, boy, it's great to finally meet you and have you on a show. Please come back again and again. You are fantastic.
Aw, thanks, Leo. It was my pleasure. I really had a good time.
Producer and reporter at Texas Standard, texasstandard.org, because it's a nonprofit radio show all about Texas. And, of course, at sixcolors.com. And you've got a great show on relay.fm all about old movies.
May I plug my book as well?
Oh,
just for fun.
Yeah, the new one is coming out when?
But the new one, probably early November. This is the iOS 16 version. It's called iOS Access for All over at iosaccessbook.com. And it covers all of the accessibility features in iOS in an exhaustive way. It's pretty comprehensive. And the deal I offer is that if you buy the book after Apple has released iOS 16, which they did very recently, then you will get a free copy of the iOS 16 version when it's released. So you get an old book now, but a new book will come to you for free when it's available.
So buy the iOS 15 book now, because a lot of that stuff's still good, and then you'll get the new one when it's ready. That's actually a very good idea. And do you have Braille editions or you have audio books?
It's EPUB or PDF. People have asked me for both of those things, and Braille is very time consuming.
Yeah.
The audio is just fun because I can imagine myself sitting in my little podcast closet reading for hours and hours. But no, EPUB, which is a very accessible format, PDF, which I make accessible, but is less accessible than EPUB. So if you want the absolute best accessible format, and it works on devices that are specifically intended for blind folks like the Victor Reader Stream, it's a DAISY compatible format. So EPUB will fit your accessibility needs.
Perfect.
Hopefully.
I bet those voices are getting better. Pretty soon you're going to have James Earl Jones reading to you. That'll be cool.
If only.
Yeah. Thank you, Shelley. Great to have you. Keep up the good work, all three of you. We do Twit Sunday afternoons, about 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. If you're really in a hurry, you can watch us do it live at live.twit.tv. And if you're watching live, please chat with us in the chat room, irc.twit.tv. After the fact, we make on-demand versions of all of our shows available at twit.tv, the website, or on YouTube. There's a dedicated channel for every show. That's a good way to share clips from the show, as long as YouTube doesn't take it down. Fingers crossed. And we also have, of course, it's a podcast, on-demand versions you can subscribe to in your favorite podcast player, and you'll get it that way automatically, just in time for your Monday morning commute. We also invite you to take a look at Club Twit, an ad-free version of all of our shows. Club Twit is $7 a month, but I think it's a good deal. Not only you get ad-free versions of all the shows, you get access to the Discord. Our Club Twit Discord is a really great place to hang out. I feel like it's more than just a chat room about our shows. It's chatting about everything going on in the world, from coding to cooking to photography, to ham radio and hardware, even travel, space, and sport ball. It's all in there. Plus, from time to time, I'll play a video game on the stream there. We've been playing Satisfactory lately, which is a lot of fun. And we have our own Minecraft servers and so forth. So it's really a great community. You also get access to the Twit Plus feed, which is a lot of content that doesn't make it to the podcast, including shows that we don't put out in public because the club pays for them, in effect. Ooh. Brand new shows like Hands on Mac with Micah Sargent, Hands on Windows with Paul Thurrott, the Untitled Linux Show with Jonathan Bennett, the Giz Fizz with Dick D. Bartolo, Stacey Higginbotham's Book Club. We've got a lot of stuff. In fact, our book club's coming up next month. The book is The Long Way to a Small, Angry Planet. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So Stacey and I and Aunt Pruitt is, of course, the club cheerleader. He's the manager there, the community manager at Club Twit. $7 a month. Let's see, that's a pretty good deal. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. There's monthly plans, annual plans, and enterprise plans. Plus, if you have one show and only one show you listen to, you can buy subscription ad-free versions of that show for just $2.99. Twit.tv/clubtwit. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I think it's just time to say have a great evening. We'll see you next week. Another Twit is in the can. Bye-bye.
Amazing.